Good morning, everyone. I would like to open today's meeting and welcome everyone joining us today here in the gallery and on the live stream. So, hello. I invite you all to stand as Councillor Bunnag acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you and good morning, and happy to provide this acknowledgement of the traditional owners. It's a brief opportunity for respect, reflection and to celebrate the oldest continuing culture in our world. The Sunshine Coast Council acknowledge the Kabi Kabi peoples and the Jinnaburra peoples whose land and waters we all now share. The traditional owners' unique values and ancient and enduring cultures deepen and enrich the life of our communities. The Sunshine Coast has been a place of celebration, abundance, connection and kinship for thousands of years, and we commit to working in partnership with the traditional owners to continue these practices and support self-determination through economic and community development. Truth-telling is a significant part of our journey, and legacy issues resulting from colonisation are still experienced by traditional owners and First Nations people. We are committed to better understanding the collective history of the Sunshine Coast traditional owners and the experiences of First Nations people. We recognise our shared history and will continue to work in partnership to provide a foundation for building a shared future with the Kabi Kabi people and the Jinnaburra people. We pay our respect to the traditional owners of the Sunshine Coast and to their elders past and present, and acknowledge the important role First Nations peoples continue to play within the Sunshine Coast community. Together, we are all stronger.
Thank you. Now, if you're able, please remain standing as I invite Reverend Lydia Fairhall from Nambour Anglican Church to provide a blessing. Welcome. Hello.
Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, fill the hearts and minds of everyone in this room with clarity, humility, compassion and peace. May they be centred in vision, steadfast in integrity, and courageous in the service of our community. For the poor and the lowly, grant them providence. For the oceans, mountains, rivers and forests of the Sunshine Coast, for the Glasshouse Mountains standing watch, for Maroochy, Mooloolaba and Noosa rivers, for the hinterland communities and the fragile coastal dunes, grant them protection and renewal. For businesses and corporations, grant wise stewardship of resources and a heart for truly sustainable prosperity. For families, children, young people, for our elders, aged care residents, teachers, healthcare workers, chaplains, first responders, for people of all races, genders and abilities, for migrants and refugees seeking belonging, for artists, workers, carers and environmental guardians, and all who contribute to the fabric of our region. Grant them a community in which human flourishing and wholeness can rise within every person. May everyone in this room be mindful of the enormous privilege and responsibility placed upon their hearts. Loving God, we give you thanks for the people who call this place home and for the wisdom gathered in this chamber and for the opportunity to shape a future marked by justice, compassion and peace. The blessing of God Almighty, Father, Son and Holy Spirit be among you and remain with you always. Amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend. Please be seated, everyone. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge that today is the 50th anniversary of the SES, and I have the special SES badge on today, and I'd like to thank all of the volunteers of the SES who have volunteered their time and served our community over 5 decades. So that's a remarkable service, and I'd like to thank them very much. We move on now. Record of attendance. We are all in attendance here this morning, councillors. Excellent. Now, would someone please move receipt and confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting held on 13 November? Councillor Dixon, seconded Councillor Natoli. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5, there's no mayoral minute today. 6, informing of conflicts of interest. Councillors, I remind you of the requirements under the Local Government Act of 2009, which sets out how councillors' conflicts of interests are managed for local government matters. These requirements apply to how we deal with such matters at this meeting. Should you have a conflict of interest in relation to an agenda item, please raise it at the commencement of that item. We move on. There are no presentations, so we move now to item 8.1, which is the Dog Exercise Area Regional Plan and Network Blueprint. And we welcome the team. There are quite a few of them entering who have been working on this significant body of work. And we welcome Nick Coluccio. Thank you to make the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Coluccio.
Thank you. I'm on. You can hear me
You
okay? All right. Good morning, Madam Mayor, Councillors, CEO, members of ELT, and also good morning to those attending in the gallery. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Dog Exercise Area Regional Plan and Network Blueprint 2025-45, a key initiative to support our growing community needs. I'm also joined here today by Adam Connell, Environmental Operations, and Matthew Robinson and Stacey Bentley from Parks and Gardens. Let's make sure this one. So our region is growing rapidly, and by 2046 we'll have over 80,000 registered dogs within our community, reflecting that 40% of households currently own one or more dogs. Dogs provide immense value to our community and the livability of our region, fostering social connections and supporting both physical and mental health positively. For many, dogs are an extension of a family. However, there also comes challenges with dogs in public spaces, such as managing the growth itself, and at times interactions between dogs and dogs, or dogs and humans, and also ensuring harmony within our natural environment. So this context underpins the need for a strategic balance approach, which is the focus of this plan. In addressing this, the plan provides a strategic region-wide framework with clear short and long-term objectives mapped out in 5-year increments up till 2045. Now, some key elements of this include a vision and set of values for the Dog Exercise Area Network, a decision-making criteria, the multi-criteria risk assessment for dog exercise area provision that considers social, cultural and environmental values, a set of desired standards of service for current and future facilities, identification gaps and opportunities across the region, and an implementation strategy that is subject to budget availability and consideration. By taking this approach, we aim to deliver a sustainable, inclusive network that responds to the diverse needs and expectations of our growing community and region. Now, the plan sets out a number of strategic actions, and detail on this can be found in section 14 from 103 of the plan. Now, some of those actions include, as previously mentioned, a clear established desired standard of service for dog exercise areas, being at local, district and council-wide levels, ensuring a balanced distribution of exercise areas across the region so all communities have access to quality facilities, creating safe, accessible and inclusive dog parks, balancing social, environment and cultural values in the planning and management of these spaces, and delivering targeted education and compliance initiatives to promote responsible dog ownership. And by working collaboratively with our community and key stakeholders to achieve the outcomes that are reflected in the intent and purpose of the plan. The Blueprint is a strategic initiative under the refreshed Environment and Livability Strategy 2017-41. It also responds to Council's December 2023 Ordinary Meeting resolution to adopt a region-wide plan. It aligns with Section 12 of our Corporate Plan and Action 2.3.5 of the Operational Plan by addressing the planning and maintaining of public spaces for both active and passive recreation. The first strategic action in the blueprint is to adopt a clear desired standard of service for the planning and delivery of dog exercise spaces. More information on this from page 104 of the plan. And these standards ensure that facilities are consistently built to a high quality and provide a range of experiences for both dogs and their owners. The plan defines 3 types of exercise areas. Council-wide areas, these have been referred to as the Doggy Disney spaces. These are large destination spaces offering unique features such as water play. They'll serve catchments within a 20-kilometre radius and a minimum size in a park setting of 3 hectares and over 1 kilometre for a beach or coastline. Then we have our district dog areas. These are also large areas, ideally with separate spaces for large and small dogs in park settings. They'll serve residents within a catchment of 7.5 kilometres, and we aim to achieve 1 for every 5,000 registered dogs with a minimum size of 10,000 metres squared or less than 1 kilometre of coastline. And then we have our local areas. These are small, accessible spaces designed for local communities, serve residents within a 2-kilometre catchment, and we aim to achieve 1 for every 1,500 dogs with a minimum size of 2,000 square metres. Now, I'll continue with provision for on-leash areas. There'll be over 1,600 kilometres of pathway network and 17.9 kilometres of beach coastline. For off-leash areas, we've established 22 new parks and 1 beach across the life of the plan. This includes 3 council-wide, 3 district and 17 locals, this bringing a total of 69 locations. It also includes 16.4 kilometres of off-leash beach coastline. So notably, 73% of our region's coastline, that is over 34 kilometres, will continue to support the provision of dog exercise, which is the largest provision in South East Queensland and something to be very proud of. Extensive community consultation underpins the plan, and Council greatly appreciates the strong response from our community. Our community feedback plays a pivotal role in shaping decisions that reflect local needs and priorities. We value the time and effort from our community in sharing ideas and perspectives during the consultation period, and this ensures that the outcomes truly represent the voice of the people that we serve. I also want to point out there are some key groups and individuals who connected with Council to bring the voice of their local community to the forefront of this plan. So the Have Your Say campaign ran for approximately 5 weeks, supported by targeted stakeholder engagement, strong media and digital promotion, a dedicated web page. We undertook a survey, and we also achieved 18 pop-up sessions throughout the region. We also held 9 focus group workshops brought together by 55 local representatives from key associations, including First Nations, veterinarian clinics, disability, dog education, beach and environmental groups, all of whom have helped shape the vision, objectives and priorities of this plan. Community participation was strong with over 2,300 survey responses. What a great effort. And we also received over 210 direct emails, which the working group responded to each one individually. Overall, there was strong support for the provision of new dog parks through the life of the plan and good support for changes to environmental areas and sports fields. We had agreement on the priorities for safety, improved signage, accessibility for all users, and education and compliance. There were some clear differences in perspectives as well. So dog owners generally opposed increased restrictions and advocated for expanded off-leash access, particularly along beach and foreshores. Non-dog owners tended to support tighter controls, citing safety, environment protection, and the need for clearer and more frequent regulation. This diversity of views was critical in shaping the final plan. Council has listened carefully and made several key amendments in response. We have strengthened the beach and foreshore access planning, recognising the strong social values attached to these spaces, while also balancing environmental protection and cultural heritage. Now, I'll just touch on some of those specific changes. At Stoomers Beach, dogs must now remain on a leash until they are 10 metres outside the car park for community safety. And at Curramundi Beach, the lake mouth is now closed to dogs between axis 253 and 254 for safety. A 50-metre adjustment at Dickey Beach Bathing Reserve to protect patrolled swimming. And sensitive areas, including rocky foreshore, are now better protected. 2 new dog off-leash parks have been committed to in Coolum and Yamundi, and that is from direct response from our community during the consultation. And as also mentioned earlier, education and compliance were clear priorities in the feedback, so the plan includes actions to increase awareness programs and promote safe and responsible dog ownership. So in closing, the Dog Exercise Area Regional Plan and Network Blueprint sets a clear direction for vibrant, sustainable communities and provides the balanced approach to support people and dogs as they share our public spaces. It creates safe, inclusive and well-designed areas that enhance wellbeing today and into the future. So thank you, Madam Mayor and Councillors. The officer recommendations are now on your screens in front of you, and we are happy to take on any questions, feedback, comments.
Thank you very much. Councillors, someone to move, Councillor Suarez, a seconder, Councillor Burns. Thank you, Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I'd firstly like to acknowledge the enormous amount of work that the Council staff have undertaken to collect the information for this report, but also to go out and engage with the community and to engage with councillors. I'd also like to thank Madam Mayor and the CEO and a number of councillors around this room who also attended our community consultation sessions to hear what the community had to say about this draft exercise area plan. Today, we are considering a regional dog exercise area plan that is about much more than creating spaces for dogs. It is about planning for the future, supporting sustainable development, promoting community wellbeing, enhancing public safety and protecting our cultural and environmental values. And importantly, this plan reflects what our community told us. The Sunshine Coast already leads South East Queensland in off-leash provision, and visitors have told us this is a factor in choosing our region. This plan builds on that strength while balancing the needs of all users. Often the community asked why we are doing this plan. Why this plan matters. We looked at this plan for a number of key reasons. As I mentioned before, sustainable development. We know that we are going to experience a lot of population growth in the future, and we know that a lot of those people who are coming to our region will be dog owners as well. So we need to be able to plan for provision of dog recreation areas. Community wellbeing, we need to create inclusive spaces. Social connection was highly highlighted by the community as a reason for having these spaces to recreate together. Public safety through designated areas, controlling where dogs can be off-leash, on-leash, and where they are prohibited provides safety not only to people but to dogs and to species in our environment. Leading on to protection of our cultural and environmental values. And also it helps council to plan for future infrastructure investment. We also heard through the consultation that this network is a tourism draw card. It was something that probably wasn't highlighted very strongly in our draft plan, but it has certainly come out through consultation. And this tourism benefits our whole region. So what the plan delivers is it balances the needs of dogs and owners with other community values by providing sufficient dog exercise areas close to where people live, ensuring fair access for everyone, protecting environmental values, maintaining safety and accessibility, and enabling appropriate budget and prioritisation. So how did we get here? We were guided by the Environment Livability Strategy. We researched community trends. We had input from industry experts, and importantly, we listened to community feedback. Dogs don't read council reports. but their owners sure do. We heard extreme opposing views, and as well we had moderate considered feedback. The feedback shaped refinements to our sports fields, future recreation parks, environmental reserves, rocky foreshores and our beaches. So here's what's proposed. As mentioned before, 22 new dog off-leash parks, upgrades to 8 sites, new off-leash beach areas, resulting in a total of 73% of our beaches being accessible for dogs and their owners, both on-leash and off-leash. That's 34.3 kilometres provision on a total of 47.1 kilometres of our beach. It's more than anyone else in the South East Queensland regional area. We will also be providing additional beach washdown showers, and I know when we put one in at Stumas Creek that was highly valued. The other things that have come out with this plan is we will have improvements in accessibility, education programs, signage and compliance support. While this is a regional plan, and I encourage councillors to make their decision based on what is best for the region, I acknowledge that individual councillors may have heard from community members and groups in their specific divisions. As the councillor for Division 9, I had many meetings and email exchanges with individuals and organised groups. I thank everyone for providing their diverse views and opinions. Madam Mayor, I may need an extension.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Bunnag, seconded Councillor Burns. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Suarez.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors. Dogs are well loved and are considered part of the family. We know this because the vast majority of people seated around this table have or have had dogs as part of their family. The issue for councillors and council officers is that, despite our individual feelings on the matter, we must listen objectively to all views. And sometimes those views were delivered in an abusive manner. I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Stumas Creek group from Division 9. While they provided their views very passionately, it was always done in a reasonable and respectful manner. My hope for the Save Stumas Creek group is that they continue as a formalised group and work with council and the community to ensure that educational activities and the members of the group assist in educating responsible dog ownership on and off the beach, which will be key in retaining its value for safety, environment and inclusivity for all users. So councillors, in closing, this is a carefully considered, evidence-based blueprint that meets the evolving needs of dog owners and the broader community. It aligns with our strategic goals, it reflects community feedback and it provides a clear action plan. I call on all councillors to endorse this regional dog exercise area plan and support the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, I have a number of questions to start off, if I may. My first one will be to Ms Jacobs, and it's a bit of a contextual question. On page 17 of the area blueprint, it talks about the number of fines that we have seen handed out across the region in the last 5 years. And in 2024-2025, it says 112 fines were handed out and 217 portions, which is approximately half of the actual number that was handed out the year previously. Can you talk us through what you'd attribute that to?
Certainly, through you, Madam Mayor. In that period of 2024, the state government made a change to the animal management legislation. So previously, the effective management of dogs in public spaces, so whether or not they're on a lead and doing the right thing, was something that sat in our local law, and the penalty for that was around the $300 mark. When the state government made the changes to the Animal Management Act, they increased that penalty to $800. Council felt that it was reasonable that, given the significant increase in penalty, that a really thorough period of education was provided, because the state still required council to undertake that education and enforcement in council's area. So we underwent a significant period of education, and we have also refined when we issue those fines, because that is a really significant penalty. And while we do take the management of animals really seriously, we want to make sure that any offences are reflective of the fine that applies.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Mayor, I've got a few more questions. Thank you, Ms Jacobs. My next question is specifically in relation to the plan, and it's to Mr Connell. Mr Connell, can you talk us through the multi-criteria risk assessment as it applies to rocky foreshores? And one example is between beach access 85 at Third Bay and through to, from Third Bay to beach access 85 at Point Arkwright. Can you talk us through the environmental and cultural values that have underpinned the multi-criteria risk assessment?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question. In terms of the multi-criteria risk assessment, more broadly, the assessment looks at all the values that the community told us were important in terms of assessing the risk of allowing access of dogs into certain areas of open space. We developed that multi-criteria risk assessment for 4 different types of open space, which included beaches and foreshores, sports fields, parks and gardens areas, and environment reserves. Each of those multi-criteria risk assessments have a pairwise assessment that goes with them, and that looks at ranking each value against another value based on the context of the open space that we're assessing. So, for example, you may have for rocky foreshores shorebird values compared to public amenity values, and you look at which one is more important. That pairwise assessment then basically weights each of those values for that type of open space, and that informs then the ratings through the multi-criteria risk assessment in terms of how much weighting or importance each of those values has. So that's how the system's set up. In terms of rocky foreshores, what drove the recommendations for prohibition of dogs on our rocky foreshore areas across the region? There's a number of values that drove that recommendation. Environmental values, so shorebird values, we know that the rocky foreshores are identified shorebird habitat, particularly for resident shorebirds. They use them for foraging. They also can use those for nesting. And there is a small number of migratory shorebirds that also use those rocky foreshore habitats. And that's identified under state government mapping as well. We also assess matters of vulnerable, near-threatened and endangered species habitat. That includes things like matters of state environmental significance, and all of the rocky foreshores on the Sunshine Coast are identified as matters of state environmental significance for their wetland values and their coastal values. So, in essence, they're a biodiversity hotspot, and they're also a niche type habitat that has important species that can only use that type of habitat to survive. So both of those factors drove a high level of risk in terms of allowing dog access into those areas. Off-leash access is a higher level of risk than on-leash access in most of those areas as well. Cultural heritage was also a significant factor. We got feedback through a number of focus group sessions that we did with the Cubby Cubby that said that rocky headlands were of significance, high cultural significance to them, and that their preference was that dogs weren't allowed into those areas. Additionally, contributing to that assessment is the difficulty in managing compliance and health and safety for staff in putting them into those spaces. So I believe Ms Jacobs' team are not able to go into those areas because it is quite difficult to access, and they're also isolated environments. So from a health and safety perspective, we have an obligation to support our staff and keep our staff safe, and it's not safe to put them into that type of environment to do compliance. We also know that those sorts of areas, in terms of compliance, we see a higher level of non-compliance. We see that in areas that are isolated. We see that in environment reserves. It's where people don't think that they're being seen. You generally see a high level of non-compliance, so that increases that risk. But we also see, if you've ever tried to walk your dog on a rocky foreshore that is quite uneven and difficult to walk on, it's actually quite unsafe to hold your dog on a lead if it's an on-leash area, because it's very uneven and difficult to walk along. So from a compliance perspective, we expect a high level of non-compliance, and it is more difficult for us to undertake compliance in those areas. So they were the main drivers that drove that recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. Through you, Madam Mayor, I have 3 more questions. I'll be as quick as I can. They are specifically relating to, first one is around Town of Seaside and beach access 96 to 98 being extended by 100 metres. The current time provision, which runs from 5 a.m. in the morning till 9 a.m. in the morning as being off-leash, but only in the period between beach access 97 and 98, is that consistent with the rest of the timed off-leash provisions across the Sunshine Coast?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The answer to that is no. The majority of the timed off-leash areas across the region are from 4 p.m. till 8 a.m. And to align with the other off-leash, timed off-leash locations, the recommendation for Town of Seaside is to extend the 100 metres, but also adjust that timing to 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. That also means there won't be any conflict with the patrolled area to the between 96 and 97 beach accesses.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. And through you, Madam Mayor, in relation to the new off-leash proposed area at Majimba, it runs from beach access 127 to 130, and then there is an on-leash section between 130 and 132. Can you talk us through what are, I guess, the education requirements for people and our approach to compliance, given that that's a flagged area, and how people will be able to navigate that section between 130 and 132?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We already have areas on the north of the coastline that are patrolled areas that are on leash as well. We work very closely with our surf lifesaving clubs to educate our community in terms of what they can and can't do in terms of taking their dogs through those areas on leash. They can transition through those areas, but they have to be moving straight through and not stopping in those areas. We will work very hard in terms of education for all the areas that are patrolled, particularly on the north end of the coast, where those on-leash provisions intersect with a patrolled area, and make sure that we have clear signage, we have clear education, and we work closely with the surf lifesaving clubs around education when the local laws are implemented related to the dog plan.
Thank you, Mr. Connell. My last question is, during the shorebird conservation consultation, there was a lot of, I think it's fair to say, scaremongering. I saw a sign at the North Shore Dog Beach which said, "Dog Beach closed," and obviously that wasn't the case, but can you just talk us through the practical implication of this? So, for instance, if my sister takes a British Bulldog Harlow down to Stumers Creek this weekend, what actually changes? What's the time frame for us to take the next step in terms of the local law amendments? What actually changes?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The recommendation here is to take the recommendations from the dog plan through to a local law amendment. The timing of that has not yet to be decided and will be brought to council at a future meeting. So there will be no change next week. The change has to go through another council meeting, as we are here today, through a local law amendment process. Following that, there will be a date identified for that local law change, and that's to be determined.
Thank you, Mr. Connell, and thank you for your patience with my questions. I might now speak to the motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
It's not often that I get inspired by George W. Bush, the former US president, who once said that the human being and fish can coexist peacefully. I believe, putting a Bushism into this particular topic, that the Sunshine Coast Council and dog owners can coexist peacefully, because this is a balanced plan. It is a fair plan, and it has been a plan that has been guided by community feedback and sentiment. It also reflects the fact that while we have 54,000 registered dogs on the Sunshine Coast, that not everyone wants dogs in public spaces. Not everyone is a dog owner like myself and believes that our dogs are actually humans dressed up as such. But what it does do is acknowledge the significant and largely respectful advocacy that has been undertaken by groups like Keep Stumers Off Leash. But I also acknowledge, as Councillor Suarez has said, that there was a level of discourse in this public debate that reached very, very low depths I myself was referred to, quote, as a dog hater, unquote, which obviously is something that we as a community need to do better at when it comes to being able to have discussions about these particular topics. But I think this plan overall shows that there has been a willingness of this council to compromise, listen to feedback and apply it as a step forward from what I describe as less than ideal outcomes and debates on other topics in the past. While I recognise that this is a regional plan, I unashamedly have taken a strong interest in the outcomes in my community and those around it. And I've listened to the community feedback, and people have said that they have wanted a balance. The starting point is if you look at Maroochydore, which in the short term involves investigating opportunities for a dog off-leash area in the Maroochydore area, which I know has been a popular request over many, many years. If you then head north of the Maroochy River, you get to North Shore, which has been well discussed in the Shorebird Conservation Plan area. In this plan, the starting point was 2,500 square metres of beach access area. From October through to April, we will be restricting approximately 500 metres of that space at the very southern end of the river mouth due to shorebird values. We'll be further taking 140 metres north of the existing 132 beach access. From a compliance perspective, it's very, very hard to actually wheel out 140 metres and say, oh, I'm in the dog off leash area. No, I'm not in the dog off leash area. We want to make this crystal clear that from 132 south, you are off leash. We then add a new dog off leash area from beach access 127 to 130, which, as Mr. Connell has said, will give people the opportunity to walk from 127 down to 130 off leash. On leash from 130 to 132 on leash. Off leash after that, which is a huge win for people in this area, considering that we are offsetting more space than has been lost during the seasonal closure all year round. It means that there is more dog off leash space at Majimba and North Shore, but in a less environmentally sensitive area. If you head north to the Sound of Seaside, there is an access that is provided for people at Boardwalk from beach access 96 to 98, an extra 100 metres, taking the total in that space to 425 metres. We are also harmonising the time limits that apply in that area from 4 p.m. till 8 a.m. the following morning, so that people, when they come to places like Town of Seaside, know that there is a consistent approach to timed off-leash space. And Councillor Suarez has talked about the compromise that has been achieved at Stumas, which is really in the mind of public safety. Because if you go to Stumas often enough, you know that it is a bit of a technically termed schmozzle walking between the car park and the beach and the shower at particular times of day. So 10 metres from the car park is a very, very sensible and fair outcome to ensure that this area remains off-leash. So in closing, Mr. Connell has talked through the reasons why we are restricting dogs around the Rocky Foreshores. But when I look at this plan regionally, I think it's fair, I think it's balanced, I think it's future-focused, but most importantly, I think it's common sense. It's not pro-dog, it's not anti-dog, it tries to find the right balance, and I commend it to my colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I might just start with a couple of questions, if I may. Mr. Coluccio, just on the multi-criteria risk assessment and the values, in just trying to understand the weighting of how we actually came across in terms of the breakdown. And just to touch on page 79, we have, and this is for beaches and foreshores, 35% for environment, 14% cultural heritage, 37% social, and 14% management. And I just want to understand, where does physical and social and mental health come into those values?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Terrier. Through you, Madam Mayor, I might pass over to Adam Connell for that one.
Certainly.
Through the Chair, thank you for your question. In terms of the weightings for the beaches and foreshores, as I said previously, there's a pairwise assessment where we look at each value against each other, and there's a decision made which one is more important value in the context of the open space that we're assessing. If you look at the attachment around the multi-criteria risk assessment, there's a number of descriptors under each of those values in terms of what sort of things we are considering when we look at that pairwise assessment and when we look at the risk rating for that location. So, for example, for environment, shorebird habitat values, we look at whether the site's within 300 metres of a mapped shorebird roost site or feeding area or nest site, whether it's nationally or internationally significant, whether we have EPBC listed species in that location, and we recommend that the risk is high if those sorts of values are located at that area. Similarly, for our social values and for beaches and foreshores, social makes up a large percentage of what we're considering in terms of that multi-criteria risk assessment. We look at things like recreation values, scenic amenity values, public safety values, access and inclusion, and impact on residents. And they're weighted differerly. Public safety is the highest weighting across all of those areas, and that's what we heard through the community consultation, both from dog owners and non-dog owners, that public safety was very important. In terms of your question around impact on people's mental health, psychosocial and the like, it's something that we consider, but in terms of the multi-criteria risk assessment, what we're primarily considering is the risk of allowing access of dogs into that parcel of open space based on the values that the community has. So that's the process that we're following. It's not focused on considering well-being of the community and the like in terms of that risk assessment. It is something that is considered as part of the broader assessment, but this is a risk assessment in terms of allowing access of dogs into that site and if that is appropriate based on the broader context against all of those values.
So just to follow up on that, it's a values-based process in regards to the MCRA. The technical panel that had been established to support the future dog exercise and assessment areas based on open space type and site-specific locations. Panel membership include officers from relevant teams to ensure technical information is considered as part of the MCRA and pairwise assessment. So the question I just ask is, what teams were the technical panel in terms of the officers from within council? And did the technical information include any relevant data collected?
Through you, Madam Mayor. In terms of the panel membership, that is in the attachment for the multi-criteria risk assessment. For beaches and foreshores, that included the manager of parks and gardens, the coordinator, business and technical parks and gardens, the manager for environmental operations, myself, the coordinator for coastal lakes and wetlands, the manager for regulatory response services, the coordinator for response services, the senior open space and recreation planner, the governance liaison officer, the community planning and engagement officer, and the sport development officer. Can I just check what your question was following there? Well,
I was just trying to understand in regards to who had input into this decision-making process from within council. And maybe just touching on the representation of the importance of the social and mental health values.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, that was certainly considered. We had the community planning and engagement officer involved that provided input into that, but other officers involved obviously consider that and understand, particularly through the community consultation that was done, the views of and well-being, social well-being of the community and what we heard from the community through that consultation. We initially did the multi-criteria risk assessments to inform the draft plan, which was done in-house through both technical officers and the panel, but we then listened to the community's feedback through the community consultation, and we went back to those multi-criteria risk assessments with the information that we got from the community and redid the multi-criteria risk assessments for every location with the additional information we had from the community. So that was considered, including the feedback we got from the community in terms of wellbeing and the like. And that panel then did a final review of that multi-criteria risk assessment, which was informed by technical officers as well, which then finalised those multi-criteria risk assessments for each area.
I just want to obviously share that's an important part of this whole report in regards to what we're actually factoring these decisions on from a regional basis as well. We talk about cultural values, and I just want to touch on page 21 of the report. We talk Stumas Creek. Coolum has been acknowledged as it has been impacted by dogs, but holds high significance as a cultural site for the Cubby people. And then it touches on all rocky headlands on the Sunshine Coast are important to Cubby Dreamtime story. Cubby have provided feedback that recommended prohibition of dogs on rocky headlands to protect tangible and intangible cultural values. Was that verbal evidence provided to Council as part of the submissions, or did we have any written evidence from our traditional custodians into this report?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The process we took to engage with our Cubby and Uniborough First Nations people was to have a series or 2 focus group sessions with members of the board for each of those traditional custodian groups. The feedback that was provided was verbal through those meetings, and it was minuted for both of those meetings that we had with each group. And that was then captured through those minutes and translated into our community consultation report. We didn't get written submissions, but we felt that the process of engaging through those focus group workshops and taking minutes from those workshops was adequate to inform the risk assessment.
Thank you. And maybe just one more question.
Certainly.
Madam Mayor. I attended all of our pop-up sessions in Caloundra, and I'm really talking about a divisional concern here. A lot of feedback was obviously given around Moffat Beach and also at Curramundi, and when we see, I believe in the report, we close off the beach at Point Cartwright, I believe, middle of next year, is that correct, in June?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, the sunset clause that was applied to that is recommended to continue through the previous ordinary meeting recommendation, which would effectively have that 200-metre section of beach closed from 1st of July 2026.
So that means, have we calculated or measured any data in the number of people that are visiting Point Cartwright, and then what other options of where those people exercising their dogs will have on the Sunshine Coast? Because I've raised these concerns when we touched on this in the previous term of council about the closure of that beach and what it will have on other access points on the Sunshine Coast. And Ballinger Beach is a beach, case in point, one of our busiest off-leash beaches. And I noticed in the report that you've also closed access for 261 now, and that's a local from Ann Street.
Through you, Madam Mayor, 262.
Sorry, my apologies, 262. So from feedback from the community, that's a local access, just because Ballinger
Is there a
Beach
question, Councillor?
Well, sorry, the question is, how are we going to accommodate the increase in that off-leash use once Point Cartwright closes down?
For you, Madam Mayor, thank you, Councillor Terry. The strategic actions in the plan provide a future dog exercise area provision, and I mentioned earlier that there are 22 new sites identified. As a priority in the plan as a strategic action is to identify future network opportunities within Maroochydore and Alex. So there's 3 sites, and we're already in negotiations with the planning team on some of those. We've also been talking to Jessica Parkin about providing better access and availability. There are some risks associated with that site at the moment, with the heavy traffic to the western side facing Nichollam Way, so protecting that. So we're very aware of that, and until the plan's endorsed, and should it be endorsed, we will be working closely to prioritise those additions.
Okay, thank you. And I may just speak to the report,
Certainly.
Madam. Councillors, I have a lot of concerns in regards to this report. I believe this is a legacy report that's rolled over from the previous term of council. I'm sure with the current administration it may have been handled differently, and that's a respect to our current administration. But and I know, just touch on my fellow Deputy Mayor, Councillor Maria, talking about having a regional overview on this plan, but my concerns are each region is different and it comes with all its challenges. And most importantly in regards to Caloundra. And from my personal experience within Caloundra, and I'll put on the record, I do not own a dog, but speaking on behalf of our four-legged friends, this really impacts Caloundra as a whole, and I'm concerned about removing the access around our rocky headlands. There is no data in regards to the number of shorebirds that actually roost on those headlands. I've surfed Moffat Beach for over 30 years, and I can probably count on one hand the amount of times I've seen a shorebird. I see more ospreys and seahawks within those cliffs than over that period of time. Moffat Beach is self-regulated. Obviously, the off-leash times that we have there currently, from 4 p.m. to 8 a.m. in the morning, work so well. And that community is, as a whole, they self-regulate. But blocking off access to our rocky headlands, and especially the ability, people can only access rocky headlands on low to mid-tide. And you have to be quite fit to walk around there with your dog as well. And it concerns me that we have not taken on board the social values, the mental health and the physical opportunities for many young people that walk their dogs. And the other concern I have in this report is the closure of future environmental and bushland parks over the next 5 years of this report. And what does that message send to us as a region for dog owners? This report was led with 2046, 80,000 dogs. But this should be a staged approach, and I understand it is a staged approach, but I believe we're taking too far, we're moving too quickly, and we're actually banning dogs from significant areas that still provide a wonderful opportunity and exercise and mental health. And as regards to the impact to the environment, I want to see data. I want to see evidence-based decision-making in this report. And I don't see that. And I see that we've reduced the number of patrols on our beach. And may I ask, how many dog patrols do we have for our 70 kilometres of beach at the moment?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Council currently has a team that run a patrol 7 days a week in the area. Historically, we have run 2 patrols 7 days a week. However, we've had to divert resources to address other higher priority matters at the moment.
Thank you, and sorry to put that question in. And this is a concern where I get many, many complaints of off-leash dogs in areas where it can be actually, we can achieve wonderful results, just like New South Wales do. They have good educational signage, but they have good enforcement. And our community is crying out for enforcement across our region. It's the 5% of people that are going to impact 95% of our beach users and our dog owners that want to walk through bushland parks. And my concern is for young women that take a dog for protection in some of these environmental areas. If it's on a lead, I cannot see how a dog's going to impact those significant environmental areas that we have on the Sunshine Coast. So in closing, I cannot support this. I'll be voting against it. I'm sure other fellow councillors will have much more to say. I do appreciate the work that's gone into this, but honestly, I think the money that was spent on this report could have been better spent on improving enforcement and maybe employing more officers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Thank you. Please be silent in the gallery. Thank you. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question first. Nick, you talked about the approach of regional, district and local parks. In terms of this plan, which is the first regional park and where is it going to be located?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks for your question, Councillor Natoli. The first one we've identified is Honey Farm Reserve, and that's in the planning stage currently, yet to be determined in terms of date of delivery. That will all be dependent on future funding availability.
Can you just describe what size and what it will have in terms of offering our community that regional significant dog off-leash area?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Again, thank you, Councillor Natoli. So, yeah, sure, 3 hectares in size as a minimum. Ideally, what we're looking for is large spaces that provide unique opportunities, water play, agility, equipment in there for dogs. They'll have car parking amenities. We'll have environmental type areas that won't be registered as environmental, but they'll have areas for dogs to roam in, different plantings, wash down facilities, shelters, car parking and potentially lighting. So really giving large opportunities for families to visit with their pets and be able to recreate in those spaces. Opportunities also outside of that from a commercial perspective, where we might have commercial operators come in and also support some of our community who are attending those spaces as well, something that we will strongly look at. So that could be dog washing down, education. In terms of compliance and future education, we see those as key locations for us to work with our internal resources and support our community as well.
So just a final question on that is obviously being towards the south or a large growing community, but obviously very close to Caloundra and maybe some of the concerns that Councillor Landsberg had in regards to the decisions and some of the impacts that this regional facility in Caloundra would potentially help offset some of those concerns.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Certainly, we believe that the regional plan provides adequate provision that has been well thought through. We've identified that the 3 types of parks or dog exercise areas, those being local, district and council-wide, overall, we want to build these facilities where we know we have registered dogs. So ideally, wherever there's more than 1,500 dogs, we want to have a location. So it's not just the region-wide facility, the council-wide, it also comes down to the local and district facilities as well. So we want to provide that balanced opportunity right across the region. Thank you.
So I might speak to the motion. Madam Mayor and councillors, today we are considering the Dog Exercise Area Regional Plan and Network Blueprint, not just for the next 12 months or 5 years, but for the next 20 years. This is more than a map of dog parks and beaches. It's about how we share our most precious public spaces fairly and sustainably. The Sunshine Coast is home to over 54,000 registered dogs, and that number is growing every year. Dog owners need safe, accessible spaces to exercise their pets, but we also have thousands of residents and visitors who want to enjoy our beaches and parks with our dogs. And underpinning all of this is our responsibility to protect fragile coastal ecosystems and wildlife habitats. Getting this balance right is not just a matter of convenience, it's about fairness, safety, and sustainability. As a dog owner, I also understand dogs are part of many families. Providing well-designed exercise areas supports responsible ownership, reduces conflict, and promotes animal welfare. And when we plan these spaces strategically, we encourage compliance with regulations and reduce pressures on sensitive areas like dunes and turtle nesting sites. Equally, we must respect those who prefer dog-free environments. Our beaches and parks are shared assets, and everyone deserves the opportunity to enjoy them without feeling excluded or uncomfortable. Clear zoning and signage help avoid confusion and conflict, ensuring harmony amongst all users. Our coastlines and natural assets are amongst the Sunshine Coast's greatest assets. Unmanaged dog activity can lead to erosion, disturbed wildlife, and degraded sensitive habitats. For example, shorebird nesting sites are highly vulnerable to dog off-leash. This blueprint prioritises environmental safeguards, buffer zones, designated access points, and education campaigns, so we can protect biodiversity while ensuring still meeting community needs. This plan is not about choosing one group over another. It's about creating a connected network of dog exercise areas that are safe, accessible, and environmentally responsible. It provides clarity for residents, reduces enforcement challenges, and ensures that planning aligns with growth and sustainability goals. In short, this is about balance between recreation and conservation, between dog owners and non-dog owners, and between today's needs and tomorrow's environmental legacies. I want to thank the incredible work that, Nick, you and your officers have done in producing this document, the engagement with our community, and the revisions to produce this final document. I commend this blueprint as a practical, fair, and forward-thinking approach, and I strongly support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Burns.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Merry Christmas to you.
Yes.
Everyone else. Just a few questions to start with, if I can, please.
Certainly.
Firstly, Mr. Connell, just could you please just clarify the changes that are outlined in the DEA plan regarding environmental reserves, like so the number and type of reserves that includes, and kind of what that might look like as an impact, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Burns. In terms of the recommendations for environment reserves, in terms of the first round of recommendations, which would be implemented with a local law amendment that will come to Council at a future point in time, there are 41 environment reserves across our region that are identified for either complete or partial prohibition of dogs. To put that into context, there's about 800 environment reserves across the council region. The majority of those environment reserves that have been identified for prohibition in the hinterland region have limited access for the public. There are some of those environment reserves that do have recreational paths and access, and as part of that process in terms of assessing whether that was still acceptable to allow that, we ran that through the multi-criteria risk assessment for the environment reserves. And there are about 6 environment reserves there that have recreational access that we will still allow recreational access for on-leash activity in those reserves, because we know that's important for our community and we feel that we can balance that risk effectively. Longer term, there are some recommendations for in the next 1 to 5 years to consider additional prohibitions in high conservation value reserves. And there's some longer term recommendations for consideration of probably another, I think there's about 40 all up over that 1 to 10 year period for consideration of additional prohibitions. All of those assessments are based on high conservation value environment reserves that generally will have matters of national or state environmental significance, things like koala habitat areas, macropod habitat, other endangered species within them, and they're the highest value reserves that we have within our network. The majority of the reserves, there is no change, and we feel that that's a fair balance and we can manage that risk in terms of the community continuing to recreate with their dogs on leash in those reserves.
Thank you.
Thanks for that, Mr. Connell. That's really helpful for me. Mr. Coluccio, just a simple question. In regards to the DEA, is there a review mechanism sewn into this DEA? And if so, what's the timeframes of that and what would that look like?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Councillor, for your question. So we're looking at 5-yearly reviews throughout the life of the plan. And part of those reviews would be to be looking at, as my colleague Mr. Connell has suggested, identifying critical areas or areas of risk or have environmental significance. So we've outlined that in the strategic actions of the plan, and we'll be doing work at the forefront of that, so bringing that back to council if there is indeed any changes.
Thank you for the clarity. Madam Mayor, if I can, I'm just, because this is a regional plan, so I'm also just trying to understand and reflecting on some of Councillor Landsberg's comments. Councillor Bunnag, in regards to Point Arkwright, which is, that's not my area, I don't really know it, are you able just to maybe explain to me about what is the access like to Point Arkwright due to tides and that sort of stuff in terms of a rocky headland area?
Okay, I'll allow a question to Councillor Bunnag. Yeah, that's fine. Through me, Councillor Bunnag, if you'd like to answer that.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor, thank you.
If you feel appropriately resourced to answer it.
I've lifetime in Coolum and 34 years. It's accessible, thank you for the question, Councillor Burns, on all tides. So, for example, if you come around from Beach Access 85, which is on the Uroomba side, if it's high tide, low tide, doesn't matter, you can access it right around to Third Bay. It is a treacherous walk. It's not for the faint-hearted. If you then reflect on Point Perry, which is in Councillor Suarez's division, that too is accessible on all tides. Having jumped off at Point Perry on high and low tide, I cannot recommend it as a walking destination. And to Mr. Connell's point, it is very difficult to access. So, can you access it on all tides? Absolutely. It's not just a low tide adventure. Obviously, more people go there on low tide, but it's absolutely accessible on all tides.
Thank you, and thanks, Madam Mayor. It was really just for me to understand a comparison between Moffat Headland and elsewhere on our rocky foreshores. One other particular question for Mr. Connell. I appreciate you've been up and down like a yo-yo this morning, Mr. Connell. In regards to the change outlined in this draft plan, we've got a slight beach access change between 261 and 262 at Ballinger Beach, and there's a zone and marked kind of line on that. Could you just explain the purpose of that demarcation, why it's there, and how it was basically come to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Burns. The recommendation for the southern end of the dog off-leash area at Ballinger Beach was identified because the location that we've identified 50 metres south of beach access 261 aligns with the Dickey Beach Bathing Reserve boundary. So that means that potentially the Surf Lifesaving Club can put the flags out anywhere within that bathing reserve area. And we felt that it was appropriate to align the boundary of the off-leash area with the bathing reserve boundary, as well as other considerations in terms of through the multi-criteria risk assessment and feedback from the community based on the draft recommendation that we had to align that off-leash area with beach access 261. We got feedback from the community that they felt that it was more appropriate to push that further south, and we felt that the bathing reserve boundary was the appropriate location for that.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the clarity. I'll speak to the matter now. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Look, this matter has been a long time coming. We'll do, again, like my other colleagues have said, just really appreciate the amount of work that's been put into this by the team. It's an 18-month journey, I believe, and from my perspective, this has been a really well-considered and robustly delivered plan. The consideration of community feedback has been extensive, and I think that's actually really reflective when you actually look at the plan and what was put out as a proposal originally through the engagement to what is being presented today. We can actively see where the staff have considered and listened to the feedback received and made appropriate changes that align with the vast array of inputs that they've taken in. So I just really want to acknowledge that this council, when it does go out to engage, it goes out to engage for the purposes of actually understanding and making what possible changes are there. And so I appreciate the team from doing that. In terms of Division 3, noting it is a regional plan, but Division 3, I am really delighted to see that the team were able to respond and ensure that access at Ballinger Beach using the boardwalk is retained, that is a really sensible and helpful and I know welcomed response to the community in Curramundi. Equally, just the extension or the reinstatement of Beach Access 255, which also aligns with the beach reserve and bathing reserve, again, was really great in terms of response to the community feedback. So really grateful for that. I'm confident that this plan does provide a balance. It is actually well considered, and it does actually consider that 60% of households on the Sunshine Coast do not own a dog. 40% do, and like me, who have a dog, I love him. I even asked him this morning when I was leaving, what would you like me to say on your behalf? And he said nothing. Admittedly, he's a fairly vacuous dog. He's handsome, but it was unhelpful in all the same. I am also, of note for me, I was really intrigued and I'm really encouraged too that 73% of our actual beaches are accessible to dogs in this region. That is an exceptional outcome. On the Gold Coast, it's something like they have 3 kilometres of beaches accessible. We have 34 point something. This is a really well-considered plan, but equal to that, it actually recognised that this is not the coastal strip beaches foreshore dog exercise area plan. It is a regional dog exercise area plan, and it has actually adequately considered the thoughts and needs and input from our hinterland rural residents as well. To the point that there's actually noted at one of the focus groups, it was recognised that platypus were being endangered by dogs off leash in certain areas along Obi Creek, and that has been recognised in this plan because we love our platypus. We want to see them retained and stay safe, as we do our koalas. So I do commend this plan to my colleagues. I think it is incredibly well balanced. And to the words of Colin, who did email a number of councillors, he said kind of thank you, but let's just get on with it. And as the Foves, a great 1990s Australian band, said, dogs are the best people, and I would just leave it at that.
Thank you for that, Councillor Burns. Thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Woof woof. Thank you, Madam Mayor. As a councillor who doesn't have any beaches in my division, I'm quite happy about that actually. I've listened very intently at what the questions that have been asked, the statements that have been made, and I've got a few questions. Nick, what's the difference, when we come to dog parks, what's the difference between a small dog and a big dog? I think I know, but how do we assess it? And is there a like when you go to the Sideshow Alley or one of the theme parks, they have a thing there that says, you know, if you're below this height, you can't go on it. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Ms Jacobs.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor, generally the guidance is around under 10 kilos versus the larger dogs. However, the onus is on dog owners to self-assess and manage that. What we're looking at probably balancing is that interaction between those small, fluffy dogs that have really big attitudes and the big dogs that are maybe not so tolerant of that behaviour, and just minimising some of those conflicts. Generally, we find communities who use those separated dog areas self-manage that really well.
Thanks very much. I thought that was the case because I've got 2 small dogs and one doesn't like big dogs and the other one loves them, so I just sort of a little concerned in that area. Next question is, Nick, could you, through you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Nick, could you give us a bit of an idea as to the comparison of off-leash and on-leash areas on the Sunshine Coast compared to the other local authorities in the southeast corner which have beaches? How many kilometres do we have compared to the others?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Look, I do have some stats handy on me here, and I'll just read through them. So Noosa Shire Council, 9 kilometres, yep. And we have over 34 kilometres, representing 73% of our beaches. Moreton Bay, 8.5 kilometres. City of Gold Coast, they have 3 kilometres of off-leash, but with on-leash it's 5.7. Redlands is 2.2 kilometres, and Brisbane City Council 1.7.
And ours?
Ours is over 34 kilometres.
Thank you very much. So it's obvious that our dog owners are not disadvantaged on the Sunshine Coast compared to other areas. Now, Councillor Terry brought up the issue in relation to reserves, etc. So Mary Cairncross Scenic Reserve and Marucci Bushland Botanic Garden, they're both no dog areas, aren't they?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That is correct, Councillor Johnston.
Thank you. Now, on the Maloney precinct, from Maloney Township down past the golf course and back along the Obi Creek, people are allowed to take their dog in that area as long as it's on leash. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That is correct, Councillor Johnston.
So there are plenty of places that people can walk their dogs in environmental sensitive areas. I mean, I just want to say that this is about what's reasonable for most people. It's not going to suit everyone, but we have to have controls. And my final question is to Nick. In relation to the Maloney Dog Park, which I believe is about to be installed, just to satisfy the people in my division, because you didn't mention it, it is still going to go ahead early in the new year. Is that correct? And it has been funded? I'm a bit concerned that there seems some doubt about it.
Thank you, Councillor, and through you, Madam Mayor. Councillor, yes, I believe the dog area, exercise area as part of the Maloney precinct is still going ahead. The concept and detailed design is in current process, and I believe that the first portion of the larger dog area has been funded in stage 1.
Right, thank you. I was under the understanding that it had already been designed, but anyway.
I think, Councillor Johnston, that would be part of budget deliberations moving forward at a different time or space.
It shouldn't be part of the budget deliberations moving forward because it was adopted in last year's budget. So I don't believe you're correct, Madam Mayor. Now, as a dog lover, as you can see, with my dog, I can assure residents that neither Councillor Bunag nor Councillor Suarez are dog haters. They're just normal human beings. And a lot of people wear their heart on their sleeve, but I wear my dog on my lapel. So that's just sort of how much I care about dogs and people. Now, I'd like to thank the team, and I'd thank Nick in particular because he's kept me informed all the way along the line, as he has with everybody else. And this is, the matter of dogs seems to be, whenever it comes up in council, whether it's Point Cartwright or whether it's overall, and beaches, etc., we seem to spend a huge amount of time on it, and rightly so, because it is important. Dogs are therapy for people if they're treated properly. And it's important that we recognise that, and it's important that the plan that we're developing and that we want to adopt today is going to accommodate the needs of the vast majority of people in the local authority. There are always some who want to take their dog wherever they want. And that, unfortunately, there are reasons why that can't happen. So I thank the team and encourage everybody to vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Suarez, do you have a question?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, if I may. You know, in this forum, we have to be open-minded to the debate and the issues that have been raised in this forum. And I just have some clarifying questions to Councillor Landsberg through yourself, if I may ask them.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
So Councillor Landsberg talked about feedback and getting it in writing. So my question to Councillor Landsberg is, when he was at the pop-ups in his division, in Division 2, did he get all of the verbal feedback in writing from those residents that he met with?
Councillor Landsberg, are you happy to
Yes,
respond?
yeah, happy to. I attended all those pop-ups, and yes, there was lots of submissions from residents. Took the time to fill out the survey online and obviously engage with council officers there as well. So yes, there was written submissions.
Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I attended the pop-up sessions at Stumas Creek and also at North Shore in Division 8 to also hear from residents. They did not provide written submissions at those pop-ups. I know the team were there. So the question to the team is, when we had those pop-up sessions, how was feedback taken on board? Because mostly it was verbal.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your question, Councillor. So we were handing out flyers with QR codes, allowing residents to have a think about their the plan, the draft plan, remembering that what we were doing was introducing the draft plan. So many were turning up and wanted information, were seeking clarity. And that allowed them to take that information away. It directed them to our website where they could review the draft plan or go to particular areas within the draft plan. And from there, they were able to fill out the survey. Now, the survey allowed for free text as well itself. So we received thousands of responses which we had to evaluate, and we categorised those in themes for our evaluation. And at those pop-ups as well, we did clarify elements with residents. And probably, if I can speak from the questions that were asked to me directly, was really just in ensuring that the right information was getting out there, because we heard things like, we hear you're closing all beaches, which wasn't accurate, but it was important to clarify those elements. We also had a number of groups, I think it's important to share that information, who did submit submissions, and the Moffat Beach group submitted a submission to us, and it was tabled at council. And we met with that group on a couple of occasions with the divisional councillor, and also took on questions, and they put their feelings and views and perspectives in writing to us as well, and we formally responded to that as well, councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Suarez.
Through you, Madam Mayor. A further question on that. I note that the officers were taking note of what was verbally said at the pop-ups. That feedback, was that ignored, or was that still taken on board by the team?
So where we took notes, through you, Madam Mayor, sorry, and thank you for your question. Yes, if we had notes, we also received phone calls from particular councillors as well, giving us feedback, and we would bring that back to the working group and include that in a table that we created. So we had everything in writing for us to review.
Thank you. Another question to Councillor Landsberg about shorebird observations. Can I just ask if Councillor Landsberg, when he was out spotting shorebirds, whether he was doing so with binoculars or just by visual, without any assistance?
Councillor Landsberg.
Sorry. So that's a no.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, that's what I expected. A question for Adam Connell. In terms of shorebird data collection, how do scientists visually inspect and count and collect data on shorebirds?
Through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the question, Councillor Suarez. We do a number of shorebird surveys through council officers and also through external consultants who are highly experienced in monitoring shorebirds. They include quarterly surveys of our rocky foreshores, and that's done by qualified staff in-house. They will do that from generally on the headland with binoculars, and they're fairly well trained in terms of what to look for. Many of the shorebirds are very, very small and quite cryptic and disturbed very easily, both by humans and dogs. So if you're not trained in undertaking those surveys, you probably will miss a number of those shorebirds. We also do our seasonal shorebird surveys for the migratory shorebirds in the Pumicestone Passage and in the Maroochy river system. They are done by boat with both our staff and qualified contractors. Again, they are using binoculars from a distance. They need to do those from a distance to avoid disturbing the birds. And those officers and contractors are qualified scientists able to identify those birds effectively. We also do collect data in terms of dogs on rocky foreshores and other potential threats and disturbances when we're doing those surveys, so we can understand whether those threats might be impacting the presence or the behaviour of those birds as well.
Thank you for that clarification. That's all. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Dixon.
Through you, Madam Mayor. And, Councillor Winston made a really good point. And the point was that, we've spent considerable amount of time on this subject, and I think that's fantastic. Because too often do I hear that council rushes things through, it doesn't have any meaningful community engagement, it tries to sweep and hide things. In fact, today displays that we're doing everything but that. And the point is that we've now spent over an hour on this subject. I think that's fantastic. It's getting towards the end of the year and everyone's still showing a lot of interest and passion on the subject. By way of history, some will remember in the last term of council, I'm sure some of the staff remember, I spoke out quite strongly against the changes at Point Cartwright. In fact, I probably spoke out the most vicious on this subject. Ultimately, Councillor Hungerford and former Councillor Cox and myself, we voted against council's plans to restrict dogs and essentially move on to the DEA plan. However, I think a lot has changed in that time. I've had no contact since this draft plan was reshaped by anyone in Division 6. No one's contacted me about it at all. Back when we were dealing with Point Cartwright, which I was very passionate about, I was getting a lot of contact from my area. On this subject, I haven't. And I always believe that you've got to have that contact from residents to represent a position. I always wait for that. I haven't had that this time. As a dog owner myself, we've heard a lot of people in the room are dog owners or have had dogs. I'm a responsible dog owner and I know what it takes to take care of not only my dogs, but people around me. And since becoming a dad, I've become very, very focused on seeing dogs off leash and dogs at playgrounds, dogs running around where they could knock my son over or hurt somebody. It's actually changed my views on things a fair bit. And fortunately, most people in the Sunshine Coast region are doing the right thing. We've got a fantastic user base of responsible dog owners out there. But unfortunately, there's a minority that are doing a lot of damage, a lot of reputational damage for dog owners. I want to touch on the workshops. We've had a number of workshops. I've had a number of one-on-ones with council staff. I probably haven't agreed with the council staff on everything, but I've learnt a lot in the process and I found that I was listened to and I was respected as a councillor, even though I had some different views. And I found that the whole process in terms of community engagement, the staff being at hostile pop-ups in the community. In fact, I will congratulate not only the councillors here, but the staff that turned up at some of those really hard discussions. But they turned up to listen. That's what they turned up to do. They didn't turn up to challenge, they turned up to listen and be respectful. Whilst I am disappointed that Point Cartwright hasn't been reviewed and we're not looking at making changes there to reinstate some accesses, I believe that I can't just continually turn up and vote against everything. It'd be really easy for me today, based on my passionate track record, to turn up here today and just blow this thing apart and say I'm not going to support it. But I found more good in this report. I've actually found that there are some fantastic things we're doing. And we heard today that we still have the most accessible beaches in southeast Queensland. Tick, we still have that. We still have that. And in fact, there are councillors here to the left of me that have worked with their communities to reinstate beach accesses. We've heard about it from Councillor Suarez and from Councillor Bunag. They were key issues. They worked with the staff, they dealt with the issue, and they got us a satisfactory outcome. And they didn't have to do that, but they worked with the staff and the community, and I congratulate them. That gives me more faith in the process. We've heard that we're going to have more dog off-leash parks. That's fantastic because our region is really growing. And I'll give you an example. At Harmony and Palmview right now, we've only got a small little dog park for a huge community. There's 7,000 people there now. There's going to be 16,000 when it's completed. We need to do better. We need to get more of those dog parks out there. Madam Mayor, I actually wrote some notes today because otherwise you know what I can be like. I can talk too much. I think the point is we've worked hard for 2 years. The staff have worked very, very hard. I think we've found some compromises. Again, it'd be easy for me to take a negative stance, but you can't always do that. And I need to respect that we're trying to find as much balance as we can. And if you go through the statistics, we know that there's a lot of different views. I know in my own community that there are people that don't like to see dogs out at all. But we're trying to do our best for everyone, Madam Mayor, and balance the Sunshine Coast moving forward as best we can. I'm going to leave it there. There's a lot I could say, but the point is I think the councillors have worked hard, the staff have worked harder, the community have had their views, and I think we've tried to honour that the best we can. And for that reason, I'm, on balance, going to support the report today.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. There's been some excellent comments and commentary and questions today, and I will be supporting the plan as it's presented because it does a lot of things for us and for our community, and most importantly, it goes some way to protecting and caring for our environment at the same time. Many of the people who will come to the Sunshine Coast, some with, some without their pets and animals and dogs, generally are all coming here because it's a wonderful place to live, because of the incredible environment that we have. But if we don't have this plan, our environment will be lost. And it's a matter of how quickly we wish to lose our environment that concerns me. It's 3 years since we had our first conversations about the Point Cartwright, and then again in June of 2023 when we had to revisit that. And this isn't a legacy from that time. This is an essential piece of work that the community clearly showed us need to be done because the points of view were fiercely fought and never really satisfactorily resolved in any meaningful way that we could go forward as a community and collaborate and work and live together, irrespective of our animal ownership and whether we like to be on a beach with or without a dog. This gives us an opportunity to do that really well. And it was in June 2023 where, as a council, we decided that we needed to work on this plan. And it's okay to change your mind since then. At that time, it was a 7-4 vote. And it's okay to change your mind of what you thought at that time, and Councillor Christian has spoken to that. And it's been a journey, and you've been on it, we've all been on it. For me, this plan gives us an opportunity to protect our rocky foreshores. They are essential for our bird life, the ones that live here all the time and the ones that visit. And we also need to make sure and care for the migratory shorebirds who don't go to the rocky foreshores. And I want to thank councillors and the whole community who have worked together to come up with a solution in those very sensitive areas where, through the year, our migratory shorebirds arrive. And at the same time, the turtles who arrive at a very specific time, and they need to make sure that they can lay their eggs, and then the turtles are able to hatch safely and get to the ocean and come back in 12 or 15 years' time to continue the process. And we've also heard that relationship between animal and human is very important, And there is research by Woods et al. Of 2007 that clearly documents the importance of that social bond. But please note that that social bond happens wherever the human and the dog is. It's not whether it's on a beach, in a park, in an environmental reserve. The bond happens where the bond is occurring. It doesn't need a special place. What we need to do is to protect our special places so that we can enjoy all animals and all wildlife all of the time and in the future. Because if we don't protect those places, those animals will be gone forever. Because extinction is forever. That's what it means. We don't get to enjoy that anymore. And that is a reason people come to live here. It's why many people live here today, and it's why another 100,000 people and their pets will come and live here in the next 20 years. So whatever your viewpoint on this matter is, this will help us create a very, very good future where we can all coexist and collaborate together. And ideally, we can do that extremely well as a community together without the need for enforcement, because as a community, we've come up with good compromise and we can all follow that. And we do not need to have enforcement and $800 fines. That should be enough to convince everyone to do the right thing. But let's try and work together as a community, collaborating well, without the need for enforcement, existing together, nature and people as one. Thank you, and I'll be supporting this, and I encourage everybody to do so.
Thank you, Councillor Law. I have a question, and it's probably for Ms. Burden. I think if this plan is approved and endorsed today, could you just talk through the process in terms of the local laws for our community? What would happen from here?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Pull that microphone down.
To give effect to the decision that Council will make and any changes that need to be made, there will need to be an amendment to our subordinate local law, number 1, which is animal management local law. And it's expected that we would put that to Council sometime next year, and it will operationalise some of those changes that are required for those high priority areas that have been identified in the plan. And the local law itself will come into effect whenever Council chooses. So it depends on the commencement date. And I imagine that our team will require some time to bring the infrastructure into place.
Thank you. So basically you'll work on that and then it would come to another ordinary meeting before that, and then it would be a set time frame that would be chosen through that process. Thank you. Thanks for that. Okay. Councillors, I'll speak. Thank you for the debate. Today we have heard a variety of voices and viewpoints. Thank you to the officers for all of your work over a significant period of time. Thank you to the councillors for your work in this space in terms of listening to our community, in terms of working with the officers and all that has gone on in this space to this point. Mostly, I'd like to thank our community for your input, for the thousands of submissions, for the survey responses, for the pop-ups, for the meetings. My office personally responded to more than 150 emails addressed to me. We attended meetings. I attended meetings, the CEO, the councillors. They were robust, to say the least. It is a very emotive topic, and that is our duty. That is our job. And what happened there is we listened. We listened to our community. Our officers also then took that information and made amendments. This report is balanced. It's fair. It is absolutely a reflection of our future needs, our current needs, our loves, our desires, our conservation, our recreation, all of it in a future-focused plan for our community, with our community. And for that reason, I commend this report to you all. Councillor Suarez, would you like to close?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I too would like to thank all the councillors for the debate. We heard a lot of good feedback talking about areas that received increases. We talked about additional facilities that are going to relieve pressure on other areas. We talked about seeing changes that has been made in this plan in direct response to the feedback. We heard that this plan is not just about beaches. We heard that this plan is reasonable for most people, but not all people, won't suit everybody. Talked about involvement with the councillors and also with the community consultation, and how we've got collaborative solutions that help to protect our environment. I thank everyone for contributing to the debate in that respect. As I said, this decision is not just about one beach, it's not just about one park, and it's not just about one postcode. This is a regional plan, and it's our responsibility to our region and for its future. We face population growth, we face pressure on our public spaces, and we also have the responsibility and the need to protect our environment. If we ignore these pressures today, we invite ad hoc choices, conflict, and unplanned costs for tomorrow. Heard a few comments about fairness, the fairness of this plan. And when we talk about fairness, we have to decide, are we putting fairness in practice, or are we just talking about it in principle? This plan is fair. It's fair because it balances access for dog owners and non-dog owners alike. The plan is safe because it sets clear rules and consistent assessment criteria. And the plan is sustainable because it protects environmental values while meeting community needs. I recognise that councillors have heard strong and varied views from their communities, and I thank the Stumas Creek community for making sure they made their feelings known to myself as the Division 9 councillor. This plan is not based on anecdotes or opinion. It is evidence-based, it is community-informed, and it is strategically aligned. This blueprint advances wellbeing, environmental stewardship, and future-ready infrastructure. It's not just for today's families, but it's for the families of tomorrow. We are not elected to choose what is easiest for our division. We are elected to choose what is best for our region. Local concerns matter, but regional leadership is our mandate. Leadership is choosing the responsible path when the comfortable path is tempting. Leadership is listening to every voice and then acting for the common good. Councillors, I thank you for those who have already declared their support for this plan, and I will commend you to support the plan, not because it's easy, not because it's perfect, but because it's right for the community's wellbeing, for environmental care, and for a future-ready Sunshine Coast. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillors, I will now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillors Broderick, Burns, Natoli, Johnston, Dixon, Hungerford, Bunnag, Suarez, Law and Mayor Natoli. Those against? Councillor Landsberg. The motion is carried. Thank you, team. Thank you, councillors. We'll now take a break for morning tea for 15 minutes. We'll return at 11 a.m. Thank you, and welcome back to people watching on the live stream, to those in the gallery, and councillors. Next up, item 8.2, the development application for a material change of use to establish a telecommunication facility at 33 Rim Road, Buderim. I welcome Ms Larica to present this item. Councillors, Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I have a declarable conflict of interest. I, Councillor Edmund Hungerford, notify that I have a declarable conflict of interest in item 8.2 to be considered at the ordinary meeting on Thursday the 11th of December. Due to one of the objectors, Monique Tomlin, and her husband Clayton Tomlin, are personal family friends and have supported me in previous election campaigns, handing out how to vote cards and managing polling booths for me previously. This would bring into question my impartiality in assessing the application on the Rim Road Telecommunications Tower. I can choose to leave or stay in the room. For transparency, I'm quite happy to leave the room and allow the rest of the council to debate and vote on this item. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hungerford. We'll just pause now while you leave. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Lorica. We'll begin the presentation.
Good morning, Madam Mayor and councillors. I'm here to present a report on the development application for a material change of use to establish a telecommunications facility at 33 Rim Road, Buderim. This application is before council for a decision due to the level of community interest in the proposal. The site at 33 Rim Road is located on the northern side of Buderim and contains a water supply reservoir. The land is owned by Unity Water and included in the Community Facilities Zone, with a designation for a major utility being for water supply infrastructure. Land surrounding the site is predominantly included in the low-density residential zone and contains detached dwellings. The site is steep, framed with native vegetation and accessed via a concrete driveway off Rim Road, which is shared with the adjoining dwellings at 31 and 35 Fountain Road. The proposal involves the installation of a 25-metre high monopole with a 4.2-metre slimline headframe accommodating 6 panel antennas. The tower would have a total height of 29.2 metres. An equipment cabinet is proposed to be located at ground level, and the facility would be contained within a fenced compound. The facility is proposed within an existing cleared area located about 10 metres above the existing 50-metre wide, 12-metre high water supply tank. At an elevation of 71 metres AHD, the tower would appear 27 metres above the tank. The telecommunication facility seeks to improve 4G and 5G coverage to areas within North Buderim and southwest Maroochydore, including Sunshine Cove and the Wisers Farm development site, and pockets of properties near Wisers Road and North Buderim Boulevard. The application was publicly notified between 28th of January 2025 and 18th of February 2025, and a total of 184 submissions were received during this period. Of the properly made submissions, only 3 were made in support, and the rest included objections to the proposal. Matters raised in objection primarily relate to amenity impacts caused by proximity of the facility to dwellings and the visibility of the tower from residential areas. The submissions included concerns about these visual impacts, as well as noise impacts, diminished property values, and impacts to the values of the environment, including impacts on vegetation and fauna and on the character of the natural landscape. Many submissions included concerns about health impacts from electromagnetic radiation on people as well as on flora and fauna. Some submissions also raised concerns about the suitability of the site and whether sufficient investigation and consultation had occurred, including questions about need and whether alternative sites or alternative types of facilities had been appropriately considered. This map shows where submissions were received from. Submissions were received from both within and outside of Buderim, but a large concentration of submissions were received from residents located in proximity to the proposed facility. The key issues for this proposal relate to the proximity of the tower to residential properties and its impact on the character, amenity and setting of the local area. Due to its proximity and amenity impacts, the assessment found that the development does not comply with key outcomes in the Strategic Framework, Buderim Local Plan Code and Telecommunications Facilities Code. as discussed in the detailed assessment report. Approximately 285 residential properties are located within a 400-metre radius of the proposed tower location, with 8 dwellings adjoining the site. 46 of the submissions objecting to the proposal were received from residents located within this 400-metre radius. Based on the number of submissions made by people who live close by and identified in their submissions that they would be directly or indirectly impacted by the facility, it appears evident that the development would result in a land use conflict and a loss of amenity for many nearby residents due to its proximity. The applicant has provided some images depicting the visibility of the tower from particular viewpoints, including a significant visual impact on at least one nearby residential property. Council have also undertaken their own 3D modelling, which shows the tower would have visual impacts from some viewpoints, included those presented by the applicant. From many locations, including scenic routes and nearby lookouts, Council's assessment determined that the tower would not be visible, it would be obscured from view by existing vegetation, or would appear concealed within the treed backdrop provided by Buderim Mountain. This slide shows how the tower head frame would interrupt a private view of Mount Coolum from a property on Grant Street, and from a particular viewpoint, completely obscure view of the mountain. The following slides include images supplied by the applicant showing the visibility of the tower from some other nearby locations. This slide includes a photo montage provided by the applicant, which shows the visibility of the tower above the water tank from She Oak Court. Submissions made by residents in She Oak Court included concerns about being close to the tower, citing visual impacts, health concerns, detriment to the character and value of the natural landscape, and impact on property values as key factors for their objections. Some of these submitters also indicated that they can see the water tank from their houses and expect the tower to be visible above the tank when viewed from their properties. Some of the submitters in this area also advised that while other areas in Buderim may suffer from poor reception, that in this pocket their mobile reception is fine. This slide includes another photo montage provided by the applicant, which shows the visibility of the tower above the water tank and its protrusion into the skyline above Buderim Mountain, as viewed from the pedestrian level within Gumnut Court. From a pedestrian viewpoint, the visual impact of the proposal varies depending on the location of the tower in relation to the elevation of the viewer and landscape elements in the foreground and background. From many locations, the visual impact of the tower would not be significant, as it would be screened from view or would not appear to protrude above the ridge line, as previously mentioned. However, visual impacts would be experienced by residents who have a direct view of the tower or would be exposed to regular views of the tower when they travel around their local area. Despite identified conflicts with the planning scheme, Council must consider whether an overriding community need justifies approval under the Planning Act. The applicant provided coverage maps indicating improved Optus mobile service as shown in the images on this slide. The applicant has not supplied a list of other sites that were considered to service the intended coverage area, but has explained that no equivalent or better sites are available due to topographical constraints or lack of interest by the landowner. The applicant's explanation of their site selection process is included in the detailed assessment report. The applicant's preference for this site is acknowledged, and the identified improvement to Optus coverage is not disputed. However, it is considered that the identified benefits of the proposal do not clearly address a community need. Of the total 184 submissions made, only 3 supported the proposal, made from people who do not reside in the area that would be benefited by the proposal, or who were seeking coverage improvements in different locations than the tower would service. The proposal therefore lacks any support from the community it would benefit. The absence of community support indicates that the existence of an overriding need in the community interest, which is sufficient to overcome the impacts of the proposal and the conflicts with the planning scheme, has not been demonstrated. It is therefore recommended that Council receive and note the report and refuse the application due to the conflicts with the planning scheme, including the impacts on nearby residents and impacts on the character of the local area, and due to an overriding need in the community interest not being demonstrated. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, a mover, Councillor Dixon. Seconder for this report, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Dixon.
And it's quite unusual not to have Division 7 Councillor Hungerford here, not here in the room. He definitely doesn't miss much, so for him to be out of the room, he's certainly seen a conflict. You know, I've certainly had contacts from local residents in Buderim because my division's very, very close to this site. I'm just across Buderim Mooloolaba Road. So I have heard from residents in the precinct that have contacted me during public exhibition to let me know how they feel about it. And in fact, I didn't know about the proposal until I started receiving the emails. I know that Councillor Hungerford and I have spoken some time ago before the conflict was established, and I know he was receiving a lot of contacts as well. Let me say that there is a very tight line that we need to walk here in terms of our assessment. The officers have done their job, they've ticked all their boxes, and they've listened to the planning scheme. They've followed it to a T, and they've honoured our planning documents. I've recently met with a group of telco providers in terms of the planning scheme process. I think there was Optus, Telstra, and a few others. And at that meeting, they'd raised their concerns around the fact that it's getting harder and harder to find sites that we can actually legitimately approve in our planning scheme that aren't just approved in court. Their issue is we've got a lot of development coming. We've got historic issues with storms, seasonal changes, climate change, and they're saying that it is becoming quite a difficulty to connect customers to emergency services. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I encourage them to put a submission into the planning scheme and also request through the CEO's office and Deb a meeting with councillors in terms of the new planning scheme. So actually get the telco providers in the room to provide their balance to the story that we're probably not hearing. As you know, there's a Senate inquiry right now in regards to emergency 000 calls. We know that there's been a lot of discussions in the media, and I know some people have lost their lives over that. I'm not saying that's what will happen here, but we've actually got an issue, and the issue is we just can't locate these telco towers. Every time we see a report that's coming forward in an area where there's residents, we are seeing the objections, and we're also seeing that the town plan just does not allow for that. I'll give you a recent example. In Sippy Downs at Chancellor Park, we had a telco tower go in. I think there was 1 or 2 objections to the proposal. It wasn't near any homes. It was near a Woolworths commercial building. And the tower's gone up, and I actually didn't notice it until recently. It was conditioned well, screened, the colouring on the actual tower. I went, oh, there's a telco tower. Maybe that's why my phone's now working again. But we didn't get the complaints from the local residents, and the scheme supported it. My point here, Madam Mayor, is I think we need to have a bit more of a discussion because Councillor Terry Landsberg at a recent meeting of council where we refused a telco tower raised some of these points. And now that Councillor Landsberg's done that, I've spoken to the industry, they too are telling me the same things that Councillor Landsberg has told us at public meetings. I support the officers' intent here. I support the planning scheme. The officers have done a great job. They've represented the residents' views. The residents have been clear, but I don't think this is the end of the discussion. What does happen in these instances is that they do go to court. We know that the telco providers will go to court, and this is not just about Optus. We know that once a tower is established, other telcos can co-locate on that facility, which is what we want anyway. So expect to hear from, you know, Vodafone and Optus and Telstra and the other telcos out there. They will start to have an opinion soon. Anyway, I just thought it was worth bringing that to council because it's interesting information that's going to help us explore our planning scheme into the future. Notwithstanding those comments, today we're talking about this specific application, which I do support the officers on, and I'm led to believe that Councillor Hungerford would have supported too.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions, if I may. The image up there of the tower, it showed another piece of infrastructure sitting off the water tower, is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. The water supply tank currently hosts a low impact facility that's been established by Telstra.
And that's a Unity Water piece of infrastructure there, is that right?
Through you, Madam Mayor, Unity Water have consented to that piece of infrastructure being established on the water tank. It's my understanding that Unity Water have gone away or moved away from that policy and no longer wish to have third-party facilities established on their infrastructure.
Okay, so we know once that tower, I imagine it's under some sort of lease arrangement, it would have to reapply or find another location. And do we know who the provider is for that piece of infrastructure or that tower that's on the water tower? Sorry, I meant
through you. Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, so the provider is Telstra. As far as I'm aware, that provider can maintain that infrastructure. It's just that Unity Water's policy does not allow for new facilities to be added.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Christian, around, in regards to the Senate inquiry. I mean, it does touch on specific needs around disaster management, emergency phone calls. We know around 80% of all calls to 000 are on mobile phones. Just to ask a question around the submitters, and this is really around the visual amenity that's been affected and that's been raised. I believe it's on a ridge. Do we know how many of those submitters are impacted by the view of this proposal?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the number of submitters that were in the immediate vicinity totalled 46. Of those submitters, 10 identified that they thought their views would be impacted. Council's 3D modelling is unable to accommodate view sheds from inside properties. So we were unable to verify the exact extent of those impacts. What we were able to verify was that 3 properties would have a direct view and one of those properties would be significantly impacted.
And reading through the report in regards to the internal consultation that went through, was our team from Smart Cities in Economic Development consulted to have input into this report?
Through you, Madam Mayor. We did receive comments from the Economic Development team and they confirmed that the provision of such infrastructure would go towards providing a connected community, but they also acknowledged that there are planning scheme requirements that would need to be met.
Thank you. I just didn't see that comment in the report, so that was a good point. So thank you. Councillors, I'll just speak to it. Madam Mayor, look, I'll be consistent and I'm not going to support the officer's recommendation today. You know, we talk about infrastructure before development. We've got an emerging Wises Farm development. That's got also a previous approval for around 570 dwellings. And really connectivity in regards to for the Sunshine Coast is so critical for us moving forward as a growing region. We talk about connected communities, we talk about grey spots, and when the network gets overloaded with calls that are happening all at once, people driving down the motorway you can lose your signal while you're driving. So to me, I'll keep it short because we probably all spoke a fair bit in the previous report, but today I won't be supporting the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question through you. 29 metres, what does that represent in terms of the height of, if it was a building? How many stories? Are we talking about 8 stories?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I guess just estimating that a story might be about 3 metres in height, that would be almost 10 stories.
10 stories in height. And was there ever an exploration to look at a smaller type of tower rather than the 29-metre tower?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The proposal was originally applied for being 5 metres higher than the current proposal. So the applicant did make changes to reduce the height of this tower, and they have found that at this height it can provide the same coverage benefit. The applicant has not investigated a lower height for this proposal.
If I can just speak to this, this sort of reminds me of the application that we had recently in Mumbai, where, you know, we had virtually a similar type of company that wants to maximise their investment, opportunities to be able to rent, additional providers to be able to provide their services. And yet down the road there was a Telstra small post facility that was quite adequate for the local area. And I'm not sure, like Councillor Dixon has mentioned, yes, we do need to balance between the needs, but we also need to understand that there are other solutions, and it doesn't necessarily meet the requirements of this company in making profits, because they're in the business of providing these towers and then renting and selling on the opportunities. And while they do that, these towers are quite tall and they're also quite visible. And we know Rim Road is a beautiful part of Buderim. If anyone's been there, you can see the coast. But to be able to see the photos that you had and the intrusion on so many people's views, it is, I think, upon us to be able to understand that, you know, people have made decisions to go and live there, have lived there for that amenity reasons. And, you know, Buderim itself is a beautiful leafy suburb, and these types of towers don't really fit. And I think we need to size them to be able to fit in with the lifestyle. Our planning scheme sort of requires us to be able to consider these impacts and understand how it can fit in within the amenity of that area. And I think we have an obligation to support the community in understanding that these facilities, yes, they're great for the company. If they get it up, they make a huge profit. But are there other solutions that are less impactful? I think there are. I don't think, you know, we're dealing with this one particular application here. But councillors, I certainly support the officer's recommendation. I think in this particular case, this tower is just too tall, too obstructive in terms of the views, and will impact the amenity of the people quite significantly. So I don't support the application. I support the officer's recommendation strongly.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, I have a question to start. The question I have is in relation to page 33 of the detailed assessment report. It says, quote, furthermore, whether or not EME health dangers are real or perceived, it is anticipated that the presence of the facility will cause angst and anxiety for some residents living in proximity to the facility, end quote. My question to the officers is, through the Mayor, are we giving weight to unreasonable views around health risks associated with this facility?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The balancing of the impacts in this assessment, of course, it does have some regard to visual impacts. Amenity considerations can extend beyond the visual impacts, and the amenity that one person experiences may be quite different to what another person experiences. So these are very difficult impacts to weigh. In this case, the key matter is in relation to the proximity of the facility and the visual impacts, and the change in the character of the landscape that a tower would cause in that particular location. And these conflicts with the planning scheme have not been demonstrated to be overcome by an overriding community need. So I guess there's been some consideration towards amenity impacts, including potential amenity impacts, but this was not a key factor for the recommendation in weighing and balancing all of the impacts and issues associated with the proposal.
Thank you. If I rephrase my question a little bit differently through the Mayor, the consideration of these impacts is based on the reasonable consideration of the potential impacts. You're not taking into account outliers where people, for instance, are referring to unsourced and untrue information about health impacts. Is that fair?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That is correct. The health impacts are not a matter for council to regulate. And further to that, in this case, information has been presented with the application to demonstrate that the emissions from this tower would be well below the federal standards.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, and I'll speak to the motion now. I feel as I'm in a unique position in the fact that I actually have a mobile phone tower located in Yurumba, very close to my home. I open up my bedroom window each morning, look out and see it, and isn't it a beautiful sight? But the difference with this, and as I mentioned with the last application of this nature in Mumbai, is that I actually bought into Yurumba knowing that this mobile phone tower existed in that location. So I understand and can sympathise with residents who have made submissions on this particular topic as to why they are concerned about visual amenity loss, whether it's perceived, real, or to what extent it is marginal, as I can see, given the fact it's next to a 50-metre wide water tower. The reality is the planning scheme has been assessed, the code has been applied, and for me, the reason why I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation is for a quite narrow reason, and that is, if you go to page 23 of the detailed report, it states that council accepts the applicant's assertion that limited options exist in the immediate area of the location proposed. However, insufficient information has been provided for council to definitively agree that no alternative servicing options exist that could feasibly provide comparable coverage improvement. The business of the applicant is to locate and find sites for towers, and the provision of low-impact facilities is not a relevant consideration for their business, end quote. So from my perspective, I'm comfortable to support the officer's recommendation on the basis that until we are definitively sure that there are no alternative sites for this tower to be located, I'll support the officer's recommendation, and I understand why the community has had their say based on these particular impacts. Having, as I said, living near one right now, I was aware of it when I moved in, but I reflect on Councillor Christian's comments and also that of Councillor Landsberg. There is certainly some work to do with regards to telecommunications facilities on the Sunshine Coast. We have to look at, I think, a better way. If you look at some of the funding that's been provided by the federal government to improve network coverage around the country, there's been over 97 different grants provided by the federal government to improve telecommunications facilities across the nation. The Sunshine Coast, despite being one of the fastest growing regions, is not one of them. And when you see applications like this, you can see why. Because it is very hard to actually pass the test and the assessment and the overriding need for telecommunications facilities based on the current planning scheme. So I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation today.
Thank you, Councillor Banag. Councillor Burns.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, through you, and thanks for the report this morning too. Actually, quite similar to Councillor Banag, my reading of the report, I was actually not particularly convinced of the strength of the arguments presented regarding to the impacts visually and the amenity and the general unreasonableness of the tower. However, the existing planning scheme policies provide fairly strict guidelines on assessing such applications. There's no doubt in my mind that we need to support the future of the sunny coast and future telecommunications facilities to ensure that as a region that is growing rapidly, we can support businesses, residents and elsewhere to actually have good, clear, reliable access to communications. For me, I think the challenge and the big piece is that the planning scheme currently, as it proposes, does not allow this to be approved. So I will be accepting the officer's recommendation, but would also suggest to my councillor colleagues that we actually have significant work to do along the lines of what Councillor Dixon said earlier, to really significantly look at our telecommunications facilities code in our current planning scheme work, to really consider what is a reasonable way for us to ensure appropriate delivery of telecommunications facilities for this region into the future. It's a matter that's really significant for the economic well-being of this region. It's a matter of safety for people to be able to access appropriate emergency services as required. And it's just actually the general expectation now of people living in 21st century Sunshine Coast that we have good, strong, reliable access to communications. So today I will be supporting this and notwithstanding my misgivings, recognising that the planning scheme as we currently have it really only allows a narrow definition and understanding and assessment. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I have a couple of questions to start with.
Yes.
Ms Lorinka, this report is about Optus coverage. Did Optus themselves make a submission in support of this application?
Through you, Madam Mayor. There was no submission received from Optus in relation to this application.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you can answer this question, or it may be a question for Mr Whitby. Just in terms of Council's appetite to approve telecommunications infrastructure across the coast, how many telecommunications towers have we approved since January, if you're able to answer it?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I don't have that information before me. I'm not sure exactly when the approvals were issued for particular facilities. We have done a review of the number of applications for telecommunications facilities that have been made and have been approved since the planning scheme came into effect. And I can advise that 49 applications have been made and 29 of those have been approved. And only 6 of these have been refused. So the others were either withdrawn or returned or lapsed. So I guess Council does have an appetite for supporting telecommunication facilities when they are appropriately located. We haven't seen as many telecommunication facilities applications more recently. There was an influx of applications when there was a change to the 3G and 4G networks. And I believe we're seeing more applications now as there's been another change to the network from 4G to 5G and soon to be 6G, is what I understand.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll speak to the motion. I agree telecommunications connectivity across our region is vitally important, and particularly in times of disaster. However, the future of telecommunications provision across the coast is ever-changing. As you've just mentioned, we've had an influx of towers because of the change in the technology. It looks like that the future network is also going to be a bit of a hybrid, with not only terrestrial towers, but also non-terrestrial networks such as satellites. So that will be the future of telecommunications connectivity for our region, and that will supply coverage for those remote areas as well. So we are in a phase of flux, trying to provide connectivity where there perhaps isn't some, while we're waiting for the new technologies to be robust enough that we can move towards those mediums of getting connectivity. So my concern with these third-party towers is they will become a legacy item for our region, and I support the officer's notes in here that it doesn't necessarily provide an increase in coverage for the residents It just provides a small improvement for Optus with no alternative locations investigated by the applicant. I also note the residents' concerns and the high frequency of opposition from residents close to the tower, so I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I'll be speaking to support the officer's recommendation. And on planning grounds, the evidence there is to demonstrate what we need to be able to support the refusal. And I, as Councillor Maria did, I got curious about what's our track record like. And in the last 2 years, we've approved 5 and refused 2. And one of those is in the middle of Nambour. So, you know, that's it's in the CBD, it's appropriate, you don't even see it, you wouldn't know it, you'll probably be, well, where's that? It's right in the CBD on Curry Street. So we approve more than we refuse. So I support this one and accept the officer's recommendation, and I am desperate to see an application from these folks that will deliver a service in the hinterland. When 3G was turned off, there are people who have no service whatsoever, 24 hours a day, every day. Never mind if there's a storm or an issue, or they're driving down the highway, at home, in their town, in their community, they have no connection whatsoever. And yet, we still haven't seen an application from this company seeking sites to put their towers. Why? I don't know why. We need to get them in the room, as was suggested, and get them to explain why they're not putting towers where people actually need it, who have nothing whatsoever. To be able to get reception, they have to drive maybe 20 kilometres in some instances. And if they were to have a medical emergency or require those MediAlert connections for their health and well-being, they can't get it since 3G was turned off. And they still remain in ongoing battles with the service providers to this day because they're not connected. So if we can encourage our applicants to provide a service to a region that used to have a connection and now don't, that would be lovely. For today, I will support this application, and I just want to emphasise again, we have approved more than we've refused, 5 approvals, 2 refusals in the last 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Dixon, would you like to close?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I think the important take-home today is that as a council politically, we support our planning scheme and we support the good work of our staff. And the staff have done their jobs, and for that, I appreciate the effort. But I also hear in the room today that there are some other views that we need to review and we need to engage with the industry. So again, I'd make that request to the CEO and to Deborah Robinson around getting the industry in to have that discussion as part of the planning scheme review, because that's very, very important. And we've heard today that it's getting more difficult for those applicants to site their telecommunication towers. Again, here today is one of those examples. We do realise that there is an inquiry at the moment, and we will wait and see what comes out of that. Not sure how that may change planning in Queensland, don't know. But I still think we have some work to do internally to review the matter. I will be supporting the officers today, and again, thank you for their efforts. And also thank you to the members of the community that raised this issue. Again, if we didn't have the submissions that we did on this, it may have been a different outcome potentially. You never know. So my view and my ask for the region is always speak up. You know, for those people who don't feel heard, you know, this is an example where people have spoken up, they've put their views forward, we've assessed. And the key thing is if you ask the questions, we have to assess. And that's what we've done. So I just encourage people to continue to speak up and engage with their local councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillors, I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillors Broderick, Burns, Natoli, Johnston, Dixon, Bunnag, Suarez, Law, Mayor Natoli. Those against? Councillor Landsberg. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, team. And Councillor Hungerford will come back to join us. Okay. Councillor Hungerford will be back in the room in a moment, and in the meantime, we welcome Mr Innes for item 8.3. Thank you. You can begin, Mr Innes.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, I'm here to present on the Infill Development Incentives Policy, the final extension of this policy proposed. This policy was first introduced in 2017 in conjunction with Unity Water. It was intended to support the centres of Caloundra and Nambour, and was proposed to initially run for 2 years. Unity Water wanted to increase the use of underutilised infrastructure assets, and Council wished to support development in the target areas. New applications are no longer being accepted under this policy, but there are still some developments that are eligible for the policy up to the end of this month. So the incentives under the policy comprise a 50% reduction in the infrastructure charges, subject to the developments meeting the criteria of the policy, being located within the designated areas, being works that double the demand on infrastructure, and construction reaching substantial commencement by 30 December 2025. And the amount of the incentives were capped at $10 million. As stated in the policy, the success of the policy is to be measured by the number of developer applications received for the incentives and new or increased development in Nambour and Caloundra centres. So the policy has been in place, as I said, since 2017. The uptake of the policy has been modest over the life of the policy. As I said, Council had allocated $10 million in support of this policy. To this point, 855,000 has been recognised for developments in the targeted areas of Caloundra and Nambour. So the policy was intended to finish at the end of this month. However, we're proposed to extend the policy sunset date for a further 6 months, just to recognise that there are still some developments that are eligible for the policy. We're going to reduce, or proposing to reduce, the discount from 50% to 25% to acknowledge that there was always a time limit on this policy. It has been extended a number of times, and proponents have always been advised that it was intended to be a limited time period for the policy. So the change in this policy acknowledges that there are still some proposals that are eligible, and it also acknowledges that it's been a difficult time for the construction industry of late, and the Council wishes to still support it. And so one final extension of the sunset clause is considered appropriate to continue that support. And so the recommendation is that Council receive and note the report and adopt the incentives policy final extension. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, someone to move the motion. Councillor Landsberg, and seconder, Councillor Law. Thank you. Councillor Landsberg.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thank you, Mark, and thank you for the officers in bringing this report to Council. Councillors, this historically Caloundra CBD, and I'm sure I can speak on behalf of Councillor David with Nambour CBD, it's been a real slow burn. But, you know, lately, obviously we've seen over the last 6 to 12 months a significant amount of investment, a lot of business confidence in both our regional activities, major regional activity centres. And standing here today, it's important for us to acknowledge that looking at obviously reducing it to 25%, and in regards to obviously our financial position, and I know this policy was originally capped at $10 million, which we were committed to, but there's no way we're going to meet that ceiling. There's only 8 developments, I believe, currently on the books, and we can't accept any new applications in regards to this policy. Looking for your support today. It's critical for us to continue to look at these investments in our CBDs as council supporting them, but most importantly, it sends a message to industry. It is tough out there, but it's tough for us as well to deliver LGIP and infrastructure, and reflecting on our financials at the moment, I know that we have to be mindful of offering these types of incentives to industry. But no, looking for support from our fellow councillors, and I'll leave it with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. An incentive policy focused on Nambour, of course I'm going to support it. That goes without saying, and I urge support from my fellow councillors. And I recognise very clearly that we're not looking to spend money at the moment, we're looking to save money wherever we possibly can. However, the intent here is to do something, to continue on with a process that we've had in place for a long while that has not been able to be used particularly extensively in Nambour, and a frustration with one particular site where they were on the wrong side of the street and couldn't access and make use of the incentive. So as we got to the end of it, which is in December this year, in terms of existing applications that have already been approved under the policy to receive the benefit, they need to have commenced work. In Nambour, we've got one application that is very close to commencing, and with that extra 6 months, we may be able to get this over the line. And I would like to emphasise that this is for accommodation units that will very much meet the affordable housing, because it is being done and being led by a community housing provider. I would obviously prefer that we would carry on to provide the 50% discount. I accept the reasons and I accept the position we're in, and I urge you to allow us to have a 25% discount on the pre-approved amounts. This is not for anything new, this is for what is already locked into the system, and if they can't get their construction started, well, it will cost us nothing at all. If I've got the maths right, the maximum under this new regime would be 200,000 incentive for Nambour, and that's that we're giving up 200,000, they would still have to pay the 75%. I also recognise that Unity Water are giving 0 discount. They were involved in this policy, but they haven't provided any extensions, which is disappointing. However, that's obviously their decision. So I would like us to at least provide this final 6 months to enable in Nambour a community housing provider to get some apartments underway to support our incredibly urgent need for housing. So please, I know we have many decisions in front of us around dollars and cents, but please can you allow this to proceed for the next 6 months to enable a positive outcome in the CBD of Nambour. Thank you, and I do look forward to your support.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Hungerford.
Madam Mayor, I will not be supporting this today, and I'm putting my financial hat on. We're going through budgets at the moment. We're having to find savings and balance things up. It's a very tough environment. This is both effectively a ratepayer funded incentive, because that's where it comes from at the end of the day, the ratepayers. Now, this is dropping from 50% to 25% of this infrastructure charge. The big problem we've got is the Headworks charging has already got a state government cap on it. It's costing every local government, and it's going to really bite into the future. That difference has to be made up by ratepayers. General revenue, that's been going on for years now. And we've got to the stage this year where we're having to borrow a further $15 million to help plug that gap just on transport alone. And yet we're proposing to put even more incentives out there. We've been doing it and it hasn't been very successful. But in the financial climate we're in at the moment and having to have to tighten our belts and find spending cuts and savings in the future to make ourselves sustainable, to keep on handing out a subsidy on top of a subsidy to try and get some stimulation out there that ultimately our ratepayers pick up at the end of the day. The shortfall has to be made there. And the fact that this year for the first time we're having to borrow, starting to borrow on top of the ratepayers coming out of general revenue to try and plug the gap, to me is just unacceptable. So regardless of anyone else's views, as far as financial sustainability and us doing the right thing by our ratepayers, we cannot afford to keep giving money away because they have to make that up further down the track when that infrastructure needs to be done and the shortfall's there. Guess what? It's the ratepayers who pay for it. So I don't believe we should be giving any further subsidies. This is a further extension. There's already been a number of extensions on this. How long do you keep giving away? You can't play Santa Claus and responsible at the same time. So I would strongly urge you to let this run out in December, as it's set to do, and no further subsidies. In fact, we've got to get lobbying the state government to take that cap on the infrastructure charging off, because it is sinking local governments to where we haven't got the funds available to do the works out there needed by the growth. The growth's got to start funding itself. Can't keep wanting taxpayer and ratepayer subsidies to make them more viable. I'm going to be really strong on that. If we're going to be tightening our belts, then we've got to stop giving away. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a question to start with through you. The policy extension will apply to both Caloundra and Nambour. Was there any consideration of the economic activity and the difference between that level in both Nambour and Caloundra?
Through you, Madam Mayor. The consideration was that the policy was never intended to run indefinitely. It was never intended to create an ongoing differential charge rate in different sections of the Sunshine Coast area. We did acknowledge that it hasn't landed and it hasn't prompted what we had hoped it would prompt in Nambour as far as outcomes are concerned, and to a lesser extent Caloundra. But in terms of economic growth, that was not a consideration of ours. Our consideration was just that the policy had been run for some time, its outcomes were modest, and it was time to end it.
Thank you. I might speak to the motion now. I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation today. I have to adopt, I think, the mantra that don't let perfect get in the way of good in this scenario. If it was my way, I would have separated Caloundra and Nambour from this policy. To Councillor Landsberg's credit, Caloundra is absolutely bustling, it's booming. You only have to look at the level of investment that we're seeing from the state, council and private investors in Caloundra, and a lot of it is owed to Councillor Landsberg's advocacy in the last term. So I would have separated Nambour and Caloundra, but if I take a regional approach, I also recognise that getting 75% of something back is better than 100% of nothing in terms of infrastructure charges. I think that we have to support Nambour strongly in terms of any sort of further housing supply that can be generated and further economic growth and development activity. To Councillor Law's perspective, affordable housing is desperately needed across the region, but particularly in Nambour. And if this gives an opportunity for that to come out of the ground before the middle of next year, then that's a good thing. So it's not perfect. As I said, would have preferred to have seen a distinct recognition for Nambour given its performance relative to Caloundra, but I'll be supporting the officer's recommendation today.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag. Councillor Johnston.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a difficult situation, very difficult. Can I ask a question? The project that Councillor Law was talking about Do you know what 25% reduction would equal?
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, I'm sorry, Councillor Johnson, I don't have those exact figures.
Ms Robinson might be able to answer that question for us. Thank you, the Director of Managing for Growth.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you, and thank you for the question, Councillor Johnson. If I could just go through the figures. We've had, for Sydney Street, there's a development at Sydney Street in Nambour. The 25% would be approximately 51,000 on a total levy charge of 204,000. So the development would have to pay 153,000, still remains payable. While I've got the microphone and through you, Madam Mayor, with Caloundra, we've had representations on a building site in Caloundra where they're a month out of the requirement to have substantially commenced. They will be substantially commencing after Christmas. They have a total levied charge of $2.69 million for that development. If this is supported today, they will be able to not have to pay $674,000, which means that from that development we'll be getting just over $2 million remains payable. Thank you.
Councillor Johnston.
Thanks for that information, Deborah. This program has been going for 8 years, and during this week, during budget discussions, we came to fully understand what our difficulties facing us are in relation to local government infrastructure planning and where we're going to be in the future. And I understand completely where Councillor Ted is coming from, Councillor Hungerford is coming from, and it's it's a really difficult situation. I'm prepared on this occasion to vote in favour on the absolute understanding that this is the last time and that it is at 25% instead of the 50%. Now, I'm somewhat concerned that if $50,000 is going to stop a project, that it's not really viable in the first place. But having said that, I think Nambour in particular desperately needs some of this infrastructure and buildings. It's the commencement. If this one goes ahead, then others will follow, and that's vitally important. So I'll vote in favour of it.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question. The properties that are still potentially able to claim this, they've all got their approvals?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, that's correct.
So the requirement will be that they have to substantially start by the 30th of June next year, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and as Councillor Winston said, this will be the absolute last, so on that basis I would support it.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. Councillor Landsberg, would you like to close?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, fellow councillors. It is a difficult situation. I acknowledge Councillor Ted, and it is coming to you today and putting this up as a package to support both Nambour and Caloundra. Councillors, this does meet the infill policy of the South East Queensland Regional Plan, and part of this incentive is to double the GFA of any new build within these two precincts. It's an important message that we send. I totally understand in regards to the issues around our chamber, but it does continue to bring a thriving economy. It brings jobs, it brings growth, it brings construction, and that's so important now. And it's becoming more difficult as and I've seen a road project being kicked down, the can's being kicked down the road and continue to be more expensive to deliver. And I appreciate the opportunity. That's it. Councillor Winston, I can assure you I won't support any further extension. 30th of June is it. And I look forward to my fellow councillors supporting this report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. Councillors, I'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillors Broderick, Landsberg, Burns, Natoli, Johnston, Dixon, Bunnag, Suarez, Law and Mayor Natoli. Those against? Councillor Hungerford. The motion is carried. Thank you, team. Thank you. And we will continue now to item 8.4 and welcome Ms Dunbar to the chamber. Hello.
Good morning, Madam Mayor, councillors and council executive team. I'm here to present the financial performance report for November. As at 30th of November 2025, council's operating result is a surplus of $36.3 million, which is $4 million above the current year-to-date budget. This variance is due to revenue being higher than year-to-date budget by $733,000 and total operating expenses being lower than year-to-date budget by $3.3 million. Significant variances in revenue include net general rates $949,000 below year-to-date budget, fees and charges higher than year-to-date budget by $1.6 million, holiday parks $568,000 above budget with their net result a favourable $467,000. This is due to higher than anticipated occupancy rates combined with dynamic pricing contributing to strong revenue performance. Sunshine Coast Stadium and Venue 114 higher than year-to-date budgets by $383,000 and $184,000 respectively, due to event attendance better than expected and extra events not originally anticipated. Parksmart parking infringements $585,000 above budget due to the growth in areas being monitored, and Parksmart now allows for more consistent monitoring. Community land permits $336,000 above budget related to development temporary road closure permits. And lower than budget is waste refuse tip fees of $583,000. This includes $160,000, which is related to the free waste disposal that happened after the November wind event. Interest received from investment is $729,000 lower than year-to-date budget. Other revenue is $2.6 million higher than year-to-date budget, with notable contributions from re-veg offset revenue $822,000, customer response spur recoupment $333,000, Sunshine Coast Stadium events $238,000, waste royalties for Australian carbon credits $226,000, waste container refund scheme $184,000, bond recall $221,000, and lease revenue above budget $253,000. Internal sales for Quarry is below budget by $1.2 million, and this is offset some by $344,000 in external sales. Year-to-date operating expenses is $2.9 million lower than year-to-date budget, with employee costs $2 million lower than year-to-date budget due to vacancies across council. Core materials and services is below budget by $3 million. Key areas contributing to lower than expected spending include quarry expenditure $1.3 million. This is due to efficiency gains in the new crushing contract and production ahead of schedule. Some equipment could be shut down earlier than expected, resulting in expenditure for running costs being lower. Property maintenance is $910,000 lower than year-to-date budget. This is due to just efficiencies that have been found in relation to maintenance expenditure and the scheduling of maintenance. Waste $640,000 below budget, and fuel across whole of council is below budget $249,000. Levy programs are currently tracking lower than year-to-date budget at $470,000, and operating projects above budget $240,000. Depreciation is currently $1.7 million higher than year-to-date budget. So we have updated the depreciation forecast to reflect prior year contributed assets identified in August 2025 from TMR and EDQ, which has a full year impact of $1.8 million, plus the useful life review for transport, stormwater and other infrastructure assets will also result in a full year impact of $3.2 million. So these adjustments have contributed to current year-to-date impact of $1.7 million. The total capital works program has progressed $29.7 million with $85.8 million expended. It's $121,000 lower than year-to-date budget. The core capital works program has spent $56.7 million, which is $1.4 million ahead of their year-to-date budget. As of 30th of November, Council's cash balance, excluding trust, is $216.8 million, with unrestricted cash at $50.3 million and restricted cash at $166.5 million. Council's current debt at the 30th of November is $248 million, with planned new borrowings for 25-26 totalling $66.8 million. Council currently has 3 investments totalling $50 million, with term deposits maturing between 30 and 179 days at a weighted average interest rate return of 4.16%. In relation to savings initiatives, the vacancy rate is currently on target based on year-to-date profiling. For the other savings initiatives, we have identified a range of potential savings and are currently collating and validating these figures to confirm genuine savings for the 25-26 financial year. And the risks, as on the screen and outlined in the report, key elements of the 25-26 budget are based on management estimates and assumptions for rates and charges revenue, interest revenue and finance costs, depreciation and recurrent capital expenditure. And ongoing monitoring is required to ensure the capital works program is delivered within the approved budget and scope. And the recommendation today that Council receive and note the report titled November 2025 Financial Performance Report.
Thank you, Ms Dunbar. Councillors, mover, Councillor Broderick, seconded, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Sharon, for bringing this report to us. It's noted we are at the end of the year, so that's why we're seeing our cash balances diminish, and we'll be ready for another run of rates by the time we come back after Christmas, which will be nice. Just going back, and we've had a chat about it previously, there's one slide on there we talked about re-veg offset. Could you just explain what that is? Because that's some good stuff in there. Yeah.
So through the chair, re-veg offsets are related to, there may be developments or roads where we have to knock down trees or vegetation just so that development can go ahead. And as part of council, we have a fee for that service where they're impacting the environment, and we call that offsets. So there are 2 kind of offsets. They're called matters of national environment significant or matters of local environmental significant. What happens is that it can be ourselves or external. People will pay council money to, and we calculate that based on the area of what they're knocking down, and then what happens is council uses that money, and on our council land we go and do revegetation called natural areas estate, and we do natural plantings, etc., to offset what they have knocked down through that development.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The reason we brought that up is that right across the coast, and particularly from Buderim through to Glasshouse at the moment, we're seeing a significant amount of trees removed, and there is great community concern out there because of that, and a lot of that is happening at the moment because of the B to N. More will happen because of the wave. We're seeing it as well because of the MRI on our Sunny Coast motorway, and that was one of the reasons I asked Sharon what the revenue was for these offsets. There will be more to come. Just knowing, and the encouragement is that we will be replanting and re-vegging as well. So I just really wanted to make a point of that because I know that there's community concern out there as well for that. Just wanted to thank you for the work that you've done on this report as well, and the detail that you're going into. Just to explain to the community what's going on as well. So I'm really grateful for that. I also wanted to put a huge shout out in there because what's become noticeable in the way that we're reporting now is that there has been an intentional effort right across the organisation to find efficiencies in our spending and our savings. So I just wanted to extend our thanks to the ELT, the finance, and right across all of our staff for the efficiencies that we're continuing to find in order to save money We know that things are tough ahead and just really appreciate the work that's being done by everybody on that front as well. The other encouraging thing that we're seeing through here month after month at the moment is the intentional work that's being done with our own quarries and seeing them start to come and move more productively as well. So thanks for your work, Sharon and Keith. I really appreciate that, and to all of our staff. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a rare opportunity for me to ask questions or speak before Councillor Hungerford on this issue. I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Quick with your button, that's what that was.
I really do appreciate the format that these reports come through now and the detail that we're provided with. So thank you to all concerned. And I just got some questions. If the levy program funding, or sorry, revenue is $470,000 behind, and that's transport 227 and environment 36. What about the heritage one? Is that?
So through the chair, so the Arts and Heritage Levy, they're currently on budget based on their year-to-date profiling spend.
Can you explain for me why we're not getting the money in for the transport and the environment levy, but we are for the other? Because I would have thought that when people were paying their rates, they'd all get paid.
So through the chair, so with relation to the levy programs, that's based on they are lower than their year-to-date on their spend. So in respect to the revenue coming in, we are pretty much on budget with respect to that. So this is on the other side where they're actually spending that levy money, and what they've profiled year-to-date, they're a little bit behind in what they said they would, where they would be by this time of the year.
All right, thank you. And why is the property management 910,000 below budget?
So through the chair, so the property branch has been working in relation to reviewing their schedule of their maintenance across all their council buildings, and they have been able to have made a concerted effort, and they've been finding efficiencies in relation to that, and that's being reflected in those savings.
Right, it's just I'm hopeful that things aren't being held up for the sake of holding them up, that's all. All right, now in relation to the offsets, for instance, the Beerwah to Buderim section of the rail, and also the work that's going on with the Mooloolaba River interchange, who assesses what the offset's going to be? Do we assess it, or does TMR assess it?
Ms Robinson's going to come forward with that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I've never been asked that question, Councillor Johnston. I would have to take that question on notice. I'm sorry, I don't actually know the answer to that question.
Right, I didn't know it either. So.
That makes two of us. I will take that on notice, Madam Mayor, and we'll provide information back. My apologies for not knowing the answer.
And the other thing is, which Keith can probably answer, or maybe Deborah, does the offset money go into restricted or unrestricted cash?
So through the chair, it goes into restricted cash.
I hope that was the case.
Yes.
Thank you. On that basis, I'll be voting in favour. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Johnston. Councillor Hungerford.
Seems strange to come in after the fact.
I know, imagine that.
I won't go through all the figures, but what you can see in there is we've got some ups and downs in the budget. We're in a stable position at this part in time. The thing that I do bring to attention is the cash level of 216 million. That's only 50 of that is unrestricted, so we've got very limited ability to increase expenditure. And with a very anaemic $711,000 operating result projected for this year, we've got to keep our focus on keeping our expenditure under control. Not only this year, but in the outlying years as well. So it means we're going to have very constrained look at our expenditure and what we commit to, and we have here to date this budget, finance and the team have done a good job on keeping a control on that and a lid on it, so we're in a very stable position. But we've got a lot of headwinds, and that low cash environment is one that concerns me. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Burns.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, through you. Hey, thanks for this report. Ms Dunbar, just one question regarding page 10 of the presentation. We've got the savings initiatives. We've got 3 savings initiatives listed. Encouragingly, we've met the vacancy rate so far in terms of the year-to-date targets. We just currently on the presentation, it says under employee cost savings initiatives and materials and services savings initiatives that we're not meeting target. In fact, they're both blank. Can I just get an indication on, and it might not be for you to answer, I appreciate that. Can I just get some indication on how we're tracking towards that and what those initiatives actually are and what we're doing to see those savings targets realised?
So through the chair, I can answer that. So within the finance team, we have kind of reviewed up to where we are now. And so we have identified some savings. So we are just currently working through collating those and validating those in respect to that. So the first stage is that, yes, the management accounting team have reviewed that. So it's encouraging that, yeah, we will. The quantum I'm not sure of at this point, but certainly, yes, we have been able to identify some savings.
Oh, great. That is encouraging. So we might expect to see that recognised in next month's financial report.
Through the chair, yes.
Great. Thank you. That's all. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Burns. Councillor Bunnag.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for the report. Just wanted to reflect on the below revenue figures for waste and acknowledge that that's attributable to Councillor Suarez and I predominantly in terms of the free green waste disposal and general waste disposal that occurred as a result of the significant storm that we had a few Mondays ago. That is, I guess, the cost of providing a service to the community after a significant weather event. And I'd like to extend my thanks to the organisation for supporting Councillor Suarez and I in terms of being able to assist our community clean up the green waste and general waste that was affected by the storms. I also want to pay particular tribute to Councillor Suarez, who went around giving our hard-working Parks and Gardens employees who were cleaning up the significant mess lots of sustenance with frosty fruits and the like, even though she had sustained quite a bit of vegetation loss in her own property. So ultimately, I just wanted to say thank you. When people come to us and say that they want vegetation removed, green waste collection to be extended, it does come with a cost. Nothing is free, but I'm grateful for the fact that we responded in a relatively quick way to make sure that people could get their green waste that was caused by no fault of their own to a tip. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Bunnag, and acknowledging the work of our CEO and exec in that space in the decision-making to offer those services, which were also needed done in Glasshouse and Biawar, and it was right across our region. So acknowledging that we as a council did see the need, and also up in Councillor Johnston's area as well. It was really right across the region, and we did step in to support our community. So with thanks there, especially in those areas that were hard hit. Thank you. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I wasn't going to talk about the waste, but since Councillor Bunnag has, I just also want to acknowledge Councillor Bunnag consistently checking in with the teams at the Coolum Depot and also providing sustenance in terms of frosty fruits and soft drinks while they had no power to their depot. And also just perhaps through you, Madam Mayor, for our Chief Financial Officer, you'll be pleased to know that I sent 3 trailer loads full of vegetation up to Noosa Council, which I was happy to pay for because which didn't impact our waste bottom line because it was cheaper for me to send the guy that I hired with his trailer up to Noosa. It was a lot closer than Nambour. So just letting you know I've chipped in there myself.
Thank you for that, Councillor Suarez, excellent. Okay, no one else. Councillor Broderick, would you like to close? I'm sure you've got something to
Sure,
add to the
thank
debate here that's meaningful.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just a thank you again, but I also have just noted that in all the times I've watched and been part of OMs in the past and years gone by, I've got to say this is probably the most in the last few months that I've ever seen a financial report spoken about. But a lot is to be said about that in that we know that this council is invested in getting this right. So really want to thank everybody for all their work in that space. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Broderick. Thank you all, councillors. If I could put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, team. We move on now to item 8.5, and noting there'll be no presentation on this item, we will take the report as read. So, councillors, can I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Broderick, a seconder. Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Broderick, would you like to speak?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Hopefully you've all had a chance to read the Audit Committee. Again, the Audit Committee is something like the financial report in that we've seen more councillors turn up than we have ever, I think, in the past. So a huge thank you to all of the councillors for your involvement in that. The Audit Committee are doing some great work at the moment, and in turn our staff are doing an incredible job about in getting things ticked off and to the Audit Committee as they need to be. So I'd encourage everyone to have a read of those reports. There's some great stuff in there. There are a lot of reports in this particular audit minutes, and there's some good stuff in there that we're keeping track of, and look forward to seeing what happens next year, ticking those boxes.
Thank you. Councillors, anyone else? No? Oh, sorry. Councillor Johnston. Yes.
Can I ask a question to the CEO? When does Tom finish?
Oh, we'll take that on notice and provide that back to you. Thank you, Councillor Johnston. And Councillor Broderick, also just noting by the number of councillors who are attending those Audit Committee meetings, it is an indication of this council and the willingness to take the financial situation seriously. So thanks to all who either attend or pay attention to the report as it's provided to us, which is very important. So if no one else is to speak, Councillor Broderick, do you have anything to add to close? No. In that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. So we move on. There's no notices of motion today, so we'll move into the petitions. And Councillor Dixon, I believe you have a petition today.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, I will read the petition. The petition says, petition to the Sunshine Coast Council, stop the current proposed changes to Molokai and Karawatha drives at Mountain Creek. Total number of signatures, 213, total pages 12. We, the undersigned, urge the Sunshine Coast Council to reconsider the proposed changes and engage in a thorough consultation with the community. A more collaborative approach will follow for solutions that adequately address everyone's needs without sacrificing crucial amenities. Alternatives such as widening existing lanes, reducing vehicle speed limits, or implementing alternative traffic calming measures could be explored instead of outright removal of parking spaces. Lead petitioner is Mr. David Talbot.
Thank you. So Councillor Dixon's moved it, Councillor Natoli seconded. So we'll...
The 1 minute begins.
Your 1 minute begins if you'd like to speak to the petition.
Through you, Madam Mayor. As councillors would know, there's current public exhibition for engagement to do with Mooloolaba to Sippy Downs in terms of the active transport or travel network. And I've had some significant engagement with local residents in the Mountain Creek area, well supported by council staff. We've had one large public meeting on Molokai Drive, a small public meeting on Karawatha Drive, and a pop-up at the Woolworths Mountain Creek. And I've attended all of those things. Every home on the proposed corridor objected to the proposal. And I would note that council staff were out door knocking in hot weather every single home on the alignment. So residents have certainly given us their views. I will be meeting with council staff to look at what other options we have. I'd like to present this to the CEO for response.
Just a moment, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour for Councillor Dixon to submit the petition, and that is unanimously supported. Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Hungerford, I believe you have a petition to present.
Madam Mayor, I have a petition here with 103 signatures on 5 pages. We, the undersigned, respectfully petition Sunshine Coast Council to recognise that the section of Lindsay Road between Tulip Lane and Corn Close is not simply a connector road servicing those wishing to use the preferred and safer Jones-Gloucester Main Street thoroughfare. It functions chiefly as a residential road within Buderim, servicing over 680 residences, including almost 400 in this stretch directly. To take action to improve safety for residents and pedestrians along this section of road, including but not limited to installing safe pedestrian crossings, providing adequate signage and line marking, implementing traffic calming measures, and reviewing and reducing speed limits to bring them into line with other main feeder roads around the top of Buderim.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford as the mover, Councillor Dixon as the seconder. Councillor, would you like to speak now?
Madam Mayor, we've also received a similar one from Tulip Lane, which runs in the same area. We're getting these, I think all councillors are experiencing it. The increased population growth, the increased traffic flows are creating issues all around the place. And the communities there are wanting to try and make them feel safer. So we are getting a lot of areas, but a lot of cost goes involved in that as well. So I say to residents bringing this forward, yes, we can look at it and scope it, but it may take time to deliver because you've got to do it sustainably within the budget we have. So they also have printed out here photos there and what they're talking about, which has been very well done, and I commend them for the extra effort they've put in there. And I give the table this for the CEO.
Yes, we'll just put the motion to the vote. Yes, those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. You can hand that to the CEO.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Law, you have a petition.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, I do have a petition. We, the undersigned, respectfully petition Sunshine Coast Council to cease with show cause and enforcement notices when landowners are helping in the housing crisis by hosting homes on wheels on their private property, and implement the community proposed temporary accommodation local law to ensure housing security during this growing cost of living crisis. The petition is 40 pages and signed by 827 people, which has been done by hand across the Sunshine Coast.
Thank you, Councillor Law. A seconder, Councillor Johnston. Thank you. Councillor Law.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. It's a topic that has come up previously. We are absolutely in a housing crisis. It is absolutely the state's responsibility to take the lead on these matters, and this is about encouraging and urging the council to continue its collaborative and innovative approach to make a difference. And while this particular concept, I don't believe, will provide comfort or relief to people currently sleeping rough in our parks and gardens, it might help provide relief for people who are currently in housing stress, who may be able to look at more creative means of creating an affordable option for themselves with the help of private landowners. Thank you.
Thank you. We've heard Councillor Law. We put the motion to receipt the petition to the vote. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Law. If you could pass that to the CEO. Okay. Councillors, before we move into confidential session, do any of you wish to declare any personal interests in relation to item 11.1. The Chief Executive Officer advises that 11.1, that item, contains confidential information relating to a commercial matter involving the local government for which a public discussion would be likely to prejudice the interests of the local government. For this reason, it is recommended that Council move into confidential session in accordance with Section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to consider and discuss the information in this report, noting, of course, Council's decision on this item will be made during open session, which will be viewable by the public. Councillors, is someone prepared to move that we close the meeting to discuss agenda item 11.1? Councillor Burns and seconded Councillor Landsberg. I'll now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Welcome back out of our confidential session. Councillor, I note that Councillor Hungerford was prepared to move the motion and Councillor Burns to second. Thank you both. To the Councillor Hungerford, would you like to speak to the motion?
So this appears in the public realm now. What's on the screen there? Just want to be sure about what I can say, you know. Okay, I look forward to the successful completion of these disposals, as that will help Council with its financial situation and making it so that we can have funds for future projects in the future. And again, it should improve our bottom line, so I very much support it and ask you to do the same. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I've just received advice that it's confidential up until the point that we are making the vote on the resolution, and then that property list will be public. Okay. Anyone wish to speak? Anyone else wish to speak? Okay, Councillor Hungerford, would you like to close or say anything further? Well, you were speaking to it and closing all at once? Okay. In that case, councillors, I will put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay, councillors. Thank you, team. As we wrap up our final council meeting for the year, I would like to thank all of my councillor colleagues, the executive and all of the officers. And on top of that, I would like to thank our community for the strength and courage in the face of natural disasters, adversity as well, for your generosity, kindness and spirit throughout 2025. The Sunshine Coast is more than a place, it's a feeling, and this season reminds us of what truly matters. Looking out for one another, supporting our neighbours and celebrating a place that we are proud to call home. On behalf of Council, my councillor colleagues, executives and officers, I wish you and your families a safe and joyful Christmas and a bright start to the new year. Hug someone you love. Keep your family and friends close. And to all of you, yes, that's beautiful recognition. Thank you. Thank you for your service to our community. And I look forward to a very exciting 2026 ahead as we serve the people of the Sunshine Coast. Thank you to the CEO, about to come up to your anniversary of service to the Sunshine Coast next week, and to you all. Thank you. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And with that, I note that we have no further items on today's agenda. The next ordinary meeting will be held on Thursday, the 29th of January at 9 a.m. So I now declare this meeting closed at 12:51. Thank you, councillors. Thank you all.